start the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll start with roll call. Kristen Shorey.
Here.
Ayla Keiser.
Here.
Chris McLaughlin.
Here.
Stephanie Euler.
Here.
Debbie Kowalas.
Here.
Shandon Knowles.
Here.
Grace Kelly.
Here.
David Benjamin.
Here.
Okay. Item 2, agenda adjustments.
I don't have any.
Thank you. Item 3, approval of minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented from March 6th.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Item 4, proclamations and presentations. A, committee acknowledgements.
I wanted to acknowledge the administration at the high school. Thank you so much for moving the Winter Carnival assembly when there was a snow day. I had a senior that was very upset that it had got canceled, so it was a pretty big deal. You guys rescheduled it. Awesome job to Jamie and all the administration on the budget. And I want to take a moment to recognize the Key Club because it was a pretty big weekend for them over the past weekend. They went down to Springfield, Mass for a district education conference. There was 17 students that got to go this year, so that's a big deal. They learned leadership skills, made new friendships, and helped serve the community. They were awarded for their hard work and dedication by receiving multiple awards. Cameron Beers received the Outstanding Treasurer Award, and her poster won 3rd place in the digital poster contest. Abby Case won 1st in the New England's Talent Show and is qualified to go to the international contest in Los Angeles. Mason was awarded for his dedication and passion for others, and they received 2nd place Single Service Award for their fall community cleanup project that they do. And lastly, district level elections, Eva Benjamin was elected to the New England Executive Council for Bulletin Editor, and Kirsto was elected treasurer, and Taylor was installed as the lieutenant governor for Division 2. That's a lot of awards right there and huge leadership, so congrats, guys.
I also wanted to recognize the jazz, and I just had it pulled up and now I can't find it again. I want to make sure I say the right words. The Arts Boosters, they're always, you can follow them on Facebook to see all the great things that they're doing. And they had the state local jazz festival on Saturday at Stearns, and congratulations to them. The Troublemakers again stole the show, and they had a great performance and a bronze medal award. So great, congratulations to that group of very talented students.
I just want to say thank you to the staff, students, and administration at the high school for the opportunities that were offered to the students, the visual that they got into what the high school can offer at the Step Up Day. My understanding is there were about 160 students that came to these halls to see what the opportunities are here. And they were welcomed by staff, students, and administration. So that's huge to see what we have here for students. So thank you to all that participated in that.
Okay, so I just wanted to state that Student Council had a semi-formal dance on March 25th and over 300 students went. So we had a profit of over $2,000, which is a lot, and we're going to be using this for scholarships and different leadership events in the fall. And Student Council also sponsored a blood drive, and 18 people within our school were able to donate.
Just wanted to say thank you to the committee for allowing us to go down to Massachusetts for decon. I went last year and I also attended this year, and it was a really great experience both times. I got to meet a lot of new people, and all the leadership experiences were wonderful. I went to a lot of workshops, and I got a lot of great knowledge there, so thank you.
I also wanted to recognize the report, the IT report that Mr. Wheeler put together, and also the IT staff. I guess, you think about the resource officer coming on board, and I know that Mr. Grant will talk about that, but I didn't really think about all of the security pieces that were gonna go along with that, so that that officer had access to cameras and things around campus. And also, we now have the SOAR resource, the program, the alternative ed is in a different building at the Masons, and they made sure that they had internet access over there as well. So that took a lot of work. And some of you may have noticed already, but there's a new front door at the superintendent's office that will provide some security for those working in that building. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to public comments. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. We're about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. While state law in Maine requires a public comment item on agendas of a full meeting of the school committee, we also believe it is crucial for us to hear from the community members about their concerns and issues, and so are pleased to have this as an agenda item. Having said that, please note that our committee is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion, and accordingly, please do not expect the committee to respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. At the outset, we ask the speakers to identify themselves with name and town of residence. I also want to point out that per our policy, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel or specific roles. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. Persons present at the meeting are requested not to applaud or otherwise express approval or disapproval of any statements made or actions taken during the meeting. The committee will now entertain public comments from community members. Each individual speaker is allotted 3 minutes, and the guidelines I just communicated also go for the public comment during the specific agenda items. So first up is Richard Sear.
Mr. Grant, school board members, thank you very much. Richard Sear, Hermon, Maine. Yes, I am a town councilor. I'm here as a private citizen tonight. You folks were elected to represent the school board and to listen to the citizenry concern. If it gets to the point that you do not like what's being said, Mr. Keith has the option of calling a recess and everybody can leave the room. But when individual school board members get up and leave in the middle of a presentation because they don't like what's being said, you're a paid member of the town to listen to the concerns of the people. Please stay and represent the school board. If you leave, you might as well not come back. And I, as a council member, if I left, I would resign. Second, there is a bill going through the House down in Augusta, and it's called LD 394. And it's an amendment to Chapter 117. What it does is it gives the social workers and school counselors the ability to talk to the kids about transgender and to, to be heard on Thursday, April 6th. And what it does is it represents counselors and social workers to keep transgender and sex-related secrets from the parents. The parents are the ultimate responsibility towards the children, not the school. So if you have people that want to talk about changing sexes, being transgender, getting hormone blockers, or chest binders for the young ladies, that's none of your business. You need to report it to the families. And I know of one counselor who publicly spoke about if they had a child who was talking to them about being suicidal, they would not talk to the parents. That is wrong. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Regina Leonard.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Regina Leonard of Hermon. Mr. Chair, last week many people reached out to me and I received a letter that was drafted and handed out to parents at another local school meeting. I'm going to read some parts of this letter that I found interesting. Our concerns and beliefs, communication, transparency, and justification of current legal action. We do not believe we should be pursuing the state of Maine's funds to advance God's kingdom. No parental voice in decision making. We believe that the primary financial stakeholders should be fairly and equally represented. School security and safety. We believe there should be a comprehensive school safety plan, which includes an SRO. We understand that voicing opposition and advocating for change can be challenging. However, we believe now is the time to come together to pray, discuss, and draft solutions. If you'd like to support us, contribute, or seek more information, please contact. And here in this letter, at the end of the letter, is Mr. Grant, our superintendent's contact information, along with one other person. And they mentioned gathering and meeting over these concerns. When I read this letter, one could have thought that I wrote it, or the many others that came forward over the last year and a half. I was shocked to see that it was our superintendent who has fought back against us tirelessly for these same concerns, and it was his contact that was listed at the end of the letter. Explain to me why it's okay for our superintendent to demand these things from the school his kids attend, but it's not okay for the parents, stakeholders here in Hermon. I'm still waiting for my answer as to when this committee voted to approve and move forward with a lawsuit against a citizen. It seems that our superintendent is upset with the legal action that his school took, the school his kids go to, yet doesn't think we deserve the same here in Hermon. It's been almost a year and we still don't have an SRO in our school. No communication or reassurance in recent events whatsoever has been made for us. This is hypocrisy at its finest. This falls into the hands of our superintendent and this school committee. I was also told by people in attendance at the meeting that Mr. Grant claimed he spoke with Hermon's lawyers in regards to legal action being taken by the school his kids go to. I want to know whose dime this advice given to Mr. Grant by our hired and expensive attorneys came from. Using our attorneys for your own benefit is wrong, just as wrong as expecting taxpayers to purchase his Duncan. I want proof that Hermon did not pay for this advice to personally benefit Mr. Grant. This letter is signed Concerned Parents. It's a very interesting play on words, since I'm well aware of the backlash that I got when I named a group here in Hermon Concerned Citizens. Rules for thee, but not for me. That is what this is. I expect this committee to answer my questions I've asked today. For the first time in a year and a half, I've gotten no answers from you. I want answers on this. Today I'm going to speak for myself and many others that are scared to get up here and speak. We are asking for Mr. Grant's resignation. We've had enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Ford.
Barbara Ford from Hermon. I've been attending these meetings for about a year. I've never personally spoke to you, Mr. Grant. I'm also coming to speak about this letter. You speak very boldly about the leadership at Cross Point Church. I come to you as a leader in that ministry. I'm the leader of Godparent Home that supports women, children, and babies who've been through crisis that I've spoken about at other meetings. People who've suffered sexual trauma, and I've spoke about that when we talked about some of the materials that are in the libraries. I take offense. I take a lot of offense at what you've written in this letter about lack of transparency. You, sir, do not know me. And when you make a broad statement about the leadership lacking transparency, you painted me with that brush. I deserve an apology. And I'm very offended. I've sat here politely and listened for a year with what's going on. I've watched, and I respect all of you on this board for your varying opinions, and I've disrespected nobody. You disrespected a lot of people with this letter. I'm going to end with a verse, because you quoted a lot in this, both your opinion and also scripture. So I feel like I'm going to share a piece of scripture with you tonight, Mr. Grant. And I'm not going to stand outside your church and hand out letters. Matthew 7:3-5. How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there's a plank in yours? You hypocrite. First take the plank out of your eye, then you can see clearly to remove the speck out of mine.
Thank you. Greg Newell.
Greg Newell, Hermon, Maine. I'm part of the technology subcommittee, and I haven't had any communications or updates on when the next meeting will be. At the last subcommittee meeting, we were in deep discussion about deciding what computer platform the school district is going to be using. We had it narrowed down to either Windows or Google Chrome for all the devices in the school district. This is an important topic that has a huge financial and potential educational impact. I think the subcommittee with teachers, administration, and school committee members should finish having a discussion on it. I think this full committee should hear the end results of the current discussion, as this will have a major effect on students, teachers, and staff. I also found it surprising that on tonight's agenda that there is a recommendation for the school board to hire a network engineer. I'm wondering why this was not brought up in any technology subcommittee meetings. This is a critical position in the technology operations of this school district, because when the internal network goes down, it will adversely affect teachers' ability to instruct and students to learn. This will also affect access to cameras and phones, among other things, that keep our children safe. And if it happens during NUIA or other online testing, it will have a major effect on students and the school. Does this person have some basic certifications from the Computer Technology Industry Association, known as CompTIA, which is the leading provider of vendor-neutral IT certifications in the world? At the very minimum, they should have a CompTIA Network Plus certification. This cert would show that they have the basic knowledge and understanding of current networking standards and processes. This person's LinkedIn account shows that they have no IT certs, no skill or experience to be a network engineer for this school district. I hope that the school committee members received his resume and it shows that he has some current IT certifications. Technology changes quickly, which makes these IT certifications critically important. Another certification I would recommend that you require for the network engineer is network position is a CompTIA Security Plus. This would ensure the person has basic knowledge and understanding of how to handle and secure sensitive data that is going over the network about our students, teachers, and parents. Thank you for your time. I hope both these issues have a positive outcome.
Thank you. Haley Kaiser.
I've been asked why I won't address things well at a school board meeting, so here I am. I've been blessed to enjoy several professional careers in a variety of places. I've always had wonderful working relationships. In my entire career, I have never been treated with disrespect, stonewalled, left out, and absolutely discriminated against in all of my life, like I have been here trying to work with this board as a parent and then as an elected official. The tactics used to try to bully me into submission and make me fear this opportunity unless I conform to what you and our employees is the exact opposite of the purpose of a board. Claiming the policy states that I can't say anything or else not only is wrong per the First Amendment, per my attorney, but is unfair to the people who are being told blatant and slanderous information about me by several people in this room. If my approach seems abrupt to onlookers, I want those listening to know that you only hear from me after I have tried all other options and have been completely ignored. I can go with the flow if the flow is following the law. So I stand here today to inform the misinformed, because I can't sit over there and communicate as I was elected to do. By nature, I am actually quite shy, but I dare to do the right thing, say hard things out loud, and ask questions and address things that need to be done. I have asked for items to be on the agenda, I've sent emails and texts, and I've only received a handful of replies in over 2 years. The chair won't even take my phone calls, and other board members refuse to speak to me at all since the beginning. How can I do my job in such a toxic environment? Or is that the point, to stop me? And for what purpose? You seem to forget that this isn't about me. It's about our role to oversee and respectfully listen and represent the voice of the constituents along with other things. I understand that I am painted as the problem. If my wanting to address and correct things, hard things, that is what we are supposed to do. If that is a problem, then I guess that is true for you. I do not need to be liked, but you still need to follow the policy and the law and allow me to be involved and treated fairly. The board allowing the superintendent to completely alienate me is a derelict of your duty. I care deeply about the people of Hermon, and I want to work together. My dedicated perseverance could be embraced if you so choose. The truth stands the test of time, and I plan to walk that out whether you join me or not. Our town deserves better, and so do I. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Welch.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Welch, and I've been a citizen of Hermon for the past 24 years. I've never spoken in front of any board, but I've known several superintendents, their families, many families, and I do take care of several young children that are going to be going up through this system. I hadn't planned on speaking, but tonight, these past few board sessions, I'm actually at a loss for words. I'm sitting here looking at these two young ladies right here. Students that are watching all this, and it just gets me. I'm like, what? The immaturity of what I'm seeing, to me a board is to listen to you can't separate students and parents. They are one. They are one, they cannot. You have to go through the parents who elect you. They are paying your salaries, the teachers, the town itself. And I'm watching this division. To me, why cannot you listen to both sides? You have to like either side. You might be peppered with some things here, some things you don't like there, but to me, your job is to come together to unite and to come up with a solution that satisfies all. And I think that's pretty easy with respect to this, the library content and what a lot of the town people are asking for, to have some kind of rating system. And then I hear, well, they hear it on the internet, or they can get it on the internet, but okay, why can't you be a higher standard than the internet? Why can't, it says, oh, we can opt out. Okay, why don't we do the opposite? Opt in. If you want to have access to that, opt in. I would kind of think that you would have few people coming forward to opt in. I really do. But for the most part, it's the students that they're looking on, these two, and many like them, that are in leadership. And I think, from what I'm seeing, and it's not a reprimand, session, but I think this school board can do better with being in leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Cross.
Good evening, everybody. Rob Cross, I'm from Dedham. And you'll say, well, why is somebody from Dedham in Hermon? I've been following the news a lot. You guys are in the news a lot. So, I'd like to ask, what are, your security measures? Is that being presented? I'd like to ask you what your transparency is, because that seems to be interest of all parents at all schools, right? Transparency and security. It seems some people like to ask for that at other schools, but they don't seem to want to share it here. So I'll ask just a couple questions. Given the fact that we have an information processing issue here, we don't share information, is there any steps in place to give education to your leadership about how the First Amendment works? How the freedom of access works to information? Is that being taught? I would think the taxpayers would get tired of paying for lawsuits. I really would. And furthermore, I don't even need the notes anymore. Is it acceptable behavior to you guys as a board to have your superintendent go and undermine other school systems? Is that acceptable behavior? In the sales world, there's what's called the law of the lid. If your leader is only a 5 out of a 10, your organization is never going to exceed that. Right now, your organization is failing on so many levels because your leadership is not doing what they're supposed to do. If you guys can't see that, it's going to be a hard eye-opener when it hits, because rock bottom is never the place you want to be when you find out your leadership sucks.
Thank you. Amy Stubbs.
Good evening, I'm Amy Stubbs from Hermon, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. First, I'd like to address Chris McLaughlin. I'd like to acknowledge that I did receive your apology for the way you blatantly disrespected me online. I only wish this apology came before you felt pressure by others to do so after being called out for your bullying behavior. I have to question your sincerity, especially since this is not the first time you have lashed out online and then came groveling for an apology. Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. First, is the Hermon School District currently paying for mental health services from Northern Light Health or another outside agency? And if so, how are these services funded? According to your own policy titled BEDH, you are able to answer questions during this time, and if you're choosing not to do so, I would respectfully ask why.
I'm not going to answer these questions live right now. I want to make sure I have an opportunity to research them.
So I can expect that I will hear from you via email? Or?
You'll hear from the appropriate administrator. Yep.
Can you give me a timeline for that? When is a reasonable amount of time?
I'll ask the superintendent after how long it will take to get the answers. I've only heard one question, so I need to know what you're going to ask first before I can tell you how long it's going to take to answer.
I would also like to know if there is currently a way for parents to opt their children out at any age from receiving mental health services without their permission, and if so, how is that information communicated to parents, and where can I find the required forms? I'm sure many, if not all of you, are aware that the Maine Department of Education has proposed Chapter 117, and it is scheduled to be heard in Augusta this Thursday, April 6th. This policy would expand the powers of school counselors and social workers to keep transgender and sex-related secrets from parents, such as allowing them to give out puberty blockers, chest binders, and hormones, all while keeping it from parents under the guise that parents are not safe. With your permission, Mr. Chair, I would like to ask each committee member to simply give a yes or no to the following question. Do you support this bill?
We're not going to go through and
I would
ask
like
and answer
each
questions.
of you to get back to me with a response to that. If anyone here is not aware of the bill and would like to provide testimony to the state of Maine, please see me after the meeting and I'd be happy to share with you how to do that. Finally, although I have done so privately, there are a couple of people I'd like to thank publicly. First, I'd like to thank school committee member Haley Kieser. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for continuing to fight for parents' concerns to be heard and working for solutions to be found, despite the constant resistance and downright shutout you receive consistently from fellow committee members and our superintendent, Mr. Grant. Haley, your persistence does not go unrecognized or unappreciated. I'd also like to thank Mr. Freeman, the middle school principal, for making himself so accessible to parents, for always getting back to me when I reach out, for doing so promptly and always with respect. He sets the standard for how every interaction with administration and school committee members should be, and we're lucky to have him. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean McBriarty.
Sean McBriarty, Hermon, Maine.
Quote, "The legal action on behalf of our school left many of us in shock, disbelief, and disappointment. We were still wondering how there could be such a breakdown in management, communication, and transparency from leadership," unquote. One could surmise this is about the illegal action taken last May by you, Chair Jesse Keith, and your Vice Chair, Kristen Shorey, to authorize without a vote for your one employee, Superintendent Micah Grant, to sue me, trying to stomp on my First Amendment rights. Free speech, redress of grievances with you, the government, and freedom of the press fought with taxpayer dollars. The same thing I'm now suing the three of you for your willful withholding public documents and lack of transparency in the FOA process. But in actuality, this letter was recently penned by the entitled Grant to Bangor Christian School, where he, until recently, and his wife worked and his children attended because Hermon's school system clearly isn't good enough. Could your employee be any more hypocritical given his horrific lack of leadership here? Grant was a principal at this middle school where 8 out of 10 kids didn't know math, and you promoted him. Because, Mr. Chair, you and Ms. Shorey have proven time and time again, you don't care about the students, parents, taxpayers, or teachers who are not willing to go along with this communist totalism being pushed by the teachers union. Speaking of which, your local union rep and 3rd grade teacher, Aaron York, with 50% of our students not being able to do math, and 43% of our students can't read.
The role of one of our school department employees, as I mentioned in the opening remarks, our policy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My First Amendment says I can say that, so I'll take my 20 seconds back.
By the school
Please stop
department or
interrupting
against
me.
particular students. You can find that in our school policy, BEDH, section 2H. I'm kindly
Pause the
asking
timer,
you to
please.
refrain from using school department employee names going forward during public comments. We take your personnel
No, you do
concerns
not.
very seriously. On matters pertaining to personnel, feel free
That's
to
a
voice
lie.
your concerns with us via email. You may continue.
You won't answer them. 56% of our students were not able to do math, and 43 of our students couldn't read. But she also stated if parents don't like it, they can take their kids elsewhere. More national press coming for Hermon because you're the laughingstock of the nation. The same Aaron York who personally promoted Outmain, a taxpayer-funded
I'm gonna
group of
ask you again,
groomers and
please
sexual
refrain
deviants
from using
looking
names.
to take your children's innocence for their own perversions. Perversions like the 40-book transgender library display put up in this high school, paid for by a $1,000 grant from the Maine Teachers Union. This perverted display in hypersexualized material was created by librarians Kara Schwartz and Brittany McAllister, along with displaying 63 made-up genders.
Mr. McBride, that's another warning.
Yeah, I don't
I've
care
already
about the
asked you
warnings.
again.
Enabling mental
For our
illness and
policy,
narcissism.
please do not use the names of our employees.
She's mistakenly thinks she's saving our democracy through providing minors porn when they're actually a constitutional republic. Vice Chair Shorey said, I think I need to ask the librarians in the district to remove these books from the shelves to be proactive. Then denied parents the very simple sexualized materials policy in order to weed out these perverted porn books. Shorey supports porn in this very library. But she doesn't like CRT being taught to her son in the high school because it's rules for thee, not for me. You have a taxpayer-funded gay sexuality alliance pushing sex on minors here in this high school. There's a transgender policy at Hermon schools that if a male asserts themselves as a
Mr.
female...
McBride, your 3 minutes is up. Please wrap up,
you
please.
spoke over me, so I'll keep going.
Please wrap up.
Anyone who's heard of Loudoun County, Virginia, a male who identified and raped a female student...
Recess.
You gonna talk to these guys for saying things in the audience? Or are you just gonna hold me accountable?
You've used your 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, I'm
You're
not done
continuing on.
because you spoke over me. McLaughlin, who's also a social worker, has been in the national press because in reality he's a
We're
taxpayer
gonna go to recess.
transgender ideologist, profiting from the gender dysphoria being pushed in Maine schools like here in Hermon. He loves the kiddie porn book Gender Queer, which pushes minors to kink.com. I dare anybody in the audience to go to kink.com right now. McLaughlin wants to withhold secrets from parents on sexuality. He wishes to speak more about taboo subjects behind closed doors with your children. He's also discriminatory towards Christians. We'll be holding a Chapter 117 webinar tomorrow at 7 p.m., leading and asking parents for testimony to defend your parental rights in Augusta Thursday at 1 p.m. A policy in Maine that will expand the powers of school counselors and social workers to keep transgender and sex-related secrets from you, the parents. The results of this in schools separating children from their parents under the emotional blackmail that parents are not safe for not succumbing to the transgender ideology, communist totalism. The school system's a complete dumpster fire with Chair Jesse Keith and Vice Chair Kristen Shorey's reasons for that dumpster fire. Pull your kids now. Thank you.
No, it's actually the opinion of the.
And everybody thinks it's a democracy, this is not a democracy.
It's constitutional.
It's a constitutional republic, it's not a democracy. You should read your constitution if you don't know that. You should read what it is. It's not a democracy. Socialist is a democracy.
Well, you're lucky. It's not a democracy.
It's not a democracy. Absolutely. It's a representative government, it's not a democracy. I don't vote for the representatives. Provide electoral votes.
Oh, it is.
Go to school here? Do you go to school in this school? It's just like No, figures you don't know history. I don't know anything about history.
Apologize to them. Yes, there were. Numerous calls when that stuff was being posted.
If you're here next week, we'll read the Constitution. It also discusses First Amendment, Second, yeah, I'm sure you are. You wouldn't want to know that, would you? Ignorant.
I asked you questions. I have brought you questions, trying to figure out why you make decisions that you do not
Oh, one next time. As my wife said, like.
It was in February that I asked you about why you get on that page.
Oh, they're cool. You'll probably get up and leave.
Is that easily level of democracy? My
Oh, yeah, no question. That was obvious the first time he spoke, and he was the acting superintendent for 7 weeks.
I couldn't even look at it. It's just the level of democracy is off the chart. Off the chart.
So you're always going to be right.
Disagree.
Always gonna be right.
He's got the meeting out of his hands.
You don't need to say, oh, all that every time you come on here, all the package. I'm on an island. Doesn't matter if it's
Mortgage business right now, right?
You know, you've seen the ups and downs over the years.
This one's still unlike the others. I started back in April, I started commercial mortgage brokerage. So I'm doing commercial loans, lines of credit, business applications. So that's been kind of good.
Where you're operating out of.
Right out of, I'm with Northern Mortgage, also a small mortgage company, so they pay from the office and they let you do both.
Northern Mortgage, I haven't heard of them.
Yeah, a small family company out of Michigan. They own 15 other businesses. So there's only probably 13 loan officers in the whole country. So all my friend of mine was down there in Portland. And commercial stuff. He's like, do it for family. Pretty good gig.
You got a card on you? I stay right away from that unless they got a commercial building and stuff, but I get a lot of calls. I had one today, actually.
Well, you know what I'm doing is, what's really good, I've got a company that does unsecured lines of credit.
Just did $100,000 unsecured line of credit for 4.17%, fixed for 5 years. And I've got $250,000 unsecured line of credit. And they're underwriting it, they're looking at it. So, the guy's trying to do a subdivision. And they're such good borrowers that they're just throwing themselves. So the only way to get the business is not to encumber or block the first lien and let them use money without blocking the first lien.
I've got a customer that's done 3 residential loans for years. He's self-employed, he's got several businesses, but he's building a campground and a 12-month-a-year campground. And with he's got 24 cottages, he's going to have a store, things like that, so we can bring in some.
Okay, we'll call back to order. Next up is Andrew Farnham.
Hey, everybody. My name's Andrew Farnham. I'm a resident here in Hermon. Been here for 30 years. I've got 2 kids who are in their late 20s now who are graduates of Hermon. I love the education that they got here. They certainly filled out Hermon's mission statement. I've got a couple of grandkids who are in middle school and high school. I'm happy with what I've heard about their education. And I've got 3 grandchildren that were just born in the last 3 months, and I'm happy to have them go through Hermon. I've heard a lot of kerfluffle about what a miserable school system this is. I think that's total crap. I've had my own things with Micah years ago. You know, it all resolved fine. I just want to express support for the school board. I want to express support for the teachers. And I want to take the opportunity to express support for the LGBTQ community, whether they're students or staff or anyone here in Hermon. You know, I think it's really unfortunate with the, the animus that is displayed towards, honestly, a group of people in our community, statewide, nationwide. My old business partner and cabinet making master was gay. I will guarantee you he is more conservative than anyone in this room. I wish people would take time to get to know each other, maybe understand. I certainly have no problem with communication between people, trying to understand what, where you come from. God knows I get enraged listening to some of the crap that, I read in the papers or that I hear about here in town or anywhere, but I bite my tongue and figure, well, okay, they're part of the community, so that's what we got to do. I'm sorry we're in such interesting times. There's a Chinese curse that you lay on somebody and you say, I hope you live in interesting times. And we're certainly living in interesting times now. And I think if everybody could just lower the temperature, get rid of the accusatory tones, everything else, everybody just calm down. On time and under budget. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Deb Farnham?
Hi everyone, I want to thank you again for all of your hard work to help make our schools run efficiently and effectively. As my husband just said, I'm grateful for what my kids have been able to achieve. They have been through the Hermon school system. I appreciate everything that the teachers did for them, and I'm looking forward to watching my children go through. My 8th grade grandson spoke about how excited he was to go to the high school. That's something that you don't typically hear from 8th graders. There's always this nervousness, right, about what's going to happen and oh my gosh, all this and the other thing. And he's thrilled with the idea. He loved the presentation at the high school level and is truly looking forward to it. So thanks to everybody who put that together, who makes it a priority. When I was on the school committee, one of the things that I always loved was hearing about all of the scholarships
that our students were receiving upon graduation. For higher education, not necessarily college, just for furthering their higher education and what they were able to do and what our school, what our guidance council team was able to do in inspiring them to do the work to get those scholarships. Millions through the years, right? I mean, that's a big deal to be able to help take care of that burden for parents. And our school is offering that. So I look forward to hearing what the number is this year. And congrats to everybody who's working on that team. The last thing I wanted to say was, been at the town council meeting, been here at these meetings or have been watching them. And you know, the whole idea of this survey that the town wanted to roll out, I actually thought perhaps it had gone by the wayside because I hadn't heard anything. I kept hearing that, oh, we'll have more information at the next meeting. Well, I didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden it lands in my mailbox. And so I thought, well, talk about transparency. And I'm ashamed. I'm truly ashamed that our town council would do such a push-pull, to be so just egregiously inappropriate and fiscally irresponsible for putting out such a ridiculous question to our townspeople with the sole intent of just stirring the pot. Just stirring the pot. I think it's unfortunate. I plan to take my card and turn it in at the next town council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh Henderson.
Good evening, Josh Henderson, 22-year Hermon resident, and I have 2 children currently going to the Hermon schools. Chairman Keith, I would like to request that when we get back into policy IJJ in the future, that I was reading through the school board, school committee handbook, and I saw that there was a opportunity to assign an advisory committee to the board, and it's made up of parents, staff, community members, and at least 1 school committee member. You know, so I think if we just could get, I don't feel like last time that the voices of some of us that did a lot of research, did a lot of diligence, was heard or received very well from the board. So I would like to request that, please. I recently read through IJJ and I saw references to who was responsible for picking materials and how they were going to be picked, but I did not see a written standard for sexually explicit content. And as a parent, my concern is how do I navigate the opt-out process? If I have a 14-year-old that I don't want viewing sexually explicit content, how do I get that done? I certainly cannot read all the potential books that contain all the sexually explicit content. And in some research done in January for the January meeting, there was 36 books that were quite explicit, and the Hermon library catalog has them rated by interest levels, and those interest levels are 12 to 19, 14 and up, adult, young adult, and not rated. So there were 6 different interest levels, and I really think there's an opportunity to do some work streamlining those so that they're a little more accurate, because some of the ones that said 12 to 19 had some extreme amounts of explicit sexuality in them, and I just don't think that the current rating / interest level does a good job of informing parents or students. A book that was not in that initial 100 that we did check out is, which I, for the record, do not want banned. If there are students, young adults who want to read from this book, or it will help them in any way, I definitely support their ability to do so. But it's a pretty graphic book, And I'm going to request a little more time, Jesse, if I could, please.
We got to stick with the 3 minutes, so you'll get a few seconds to wrap up.
Okay. So that book was, I guess I'm too slow of a talker, but that book was not rated in the high school catalog, and I am not going to get a chance to read from it, which I intended to, but I can tell you I will send you some of the verbiage, and it is extremely graphic, and it's not rated. So how do I, as a parent, opt out of a book that isn't even rated?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin Allen?
Hi, excuse me. I'm Justin Allen and I live in Hermon. I haven't been to any of these meetings before, and I kept telling myself over the years, like, oh, you gotta go, and I'd always find an excuse not to. And then I got the survey in the mail this morning, and I decided, like, I probably should start going to these, and then I thought, well, maybe I won't speak, and then I'm glad that I put my name on the list, because I think it's really important for those of us that have kids in school. I have two, one in the middle school, and she's an excellent student, a very good critical thinker, to be able to be exposed to a variety of ideas. I mean, I think if we want these kids who are our future, we're trusting them to, we're giving them the best information that we can, we're trusting them to grow up into responsible adults. They ought to have as much information as possible to make the correct decisions. We teach them to do the right things with the tools they're given, and then that's up to them to do that. And I think if we start limiting information based on what makes us uncomfortable, or I don't agree with it, if we start limiting books based on what we consider hypersexuality or deviant sexuality or something, whatever we want to call it, then we open the door to limiting books to, what if, I'm personally pretty anti-violent, I'm against violence in most forms, but I don't think that we should ban war books, because those contain valuable lessons. There's history in there, there's personal experiences that if our children are exposed to, that's information that they have in their pocket down the road that they can, use to keep themselves safe, keep themselves better informed, and become more well-rounded citizens. And I'm not saying this as an attack to anybody. Like, I've heard sort of opposing opinions from here, but from people who, are our neighbors, and I like them, we're friendly together. Like, I'm a fairly liberal person. I know that I'm in the minority in Northern Maine, but I don't think that that's important, because we're all, we all see each other at Danforths and say hi, and, we're all have kids in school. We're all here for the same reason, and it's to make sure that our children grow up to be the best people that they possibly can. And I think that if we start limiting the tools and resources that they have available to them to get to that point, then we're doing them a disservice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse, am I allowed to ask him a question? Per our policy, it says we're allowed to ask questions. So may I ask a question?
Would you like to?
I'll try.
Don't feel obligated to answer. Sure.
Sure. So you made a statement that made me think. So you said we shouldn't ban war books because it has valuable lessons, things that they could take with them. And so my question is, if that is true, all of the books that talk about snorting cocaine and sex with animals and things like that, wouldn't the same be true that a student could take that information and also take that lesson and try and be tempted to do those things? I mean, I think the same would be true.
Sure. I think if you read a book that said snorting cocaine is awesome and there's zero consequences and it's the greatest thing in the world, and that was the only book that you read on the subject, that you might make those decisions. But typically, like, at least in most of the literature that I've encountered, people who engage in behaviors like that, it's ends up being a cautionary tale. There's consequences to actions. So it's not like, I read 5 pages and the person snorted cocaine and nothing happened. Finish the book and find out that, like, maybe their life was ruined. Maybe it's a redemption story. They went to rehab, and they're trying to tell these lessons. I read a biography not that long ago of a person who was a severe addict and, just off the rails, everything, drugs, alcohol, and then became sober, and then sort of expanded his career, and now is pushing that message of sobriety on other people. If we were to ban that book because it had references to drug addiction, we'd also be banning that positive message of, that was the wrong thing that I was doing. I've turned my life around, and now I'm a better person for it, and I'm able to spread that wisdom to other people that might be in the same position. So sure, like, you know, if we start ripping pages out of books because they have bad things on them, then, you know, where do you stop? You know, so that would be the answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim Stewart.
Hello, Kim Stewart, Hermon. I know you can see me, but hopefully you can hear me too. First, I wanted to share a recommendation that I also made at the town council last week, and that is to make all FOA requests public on the Hermon School Department website. One example I've looked at is the Gorham School Department. They list the date of the request, who requested the information or the document, how many hours it took the administration to complete the request, when it was completed, and the actual results in PDF form. I think this would be beneficial to both the school administration as well as citizens. I've heard many citizens ask for better communication and transparency, which happens to be kind of the word of the night, over the past several months. And one way of being transparent would be to make these requests available to the public. Not only would it likely cut down on the number of requests for redundant information, but it would help communicate what the concerns of our fellow citizens are. From what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is purely just from listening to people at meetings, FOA requests are often the cause of legal fees incurred by the school department. With these requests being public knowledge, tax-paying citizens would be able to see the results of where some of their tax dollars are going. Most importantly tonight, totally different topic, I want to say thank you to our teachers for guiding our children. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. Both physically and emotionally through the active shooter drill last week. I can only imagine that it's the toughest lesson they will ever teach. And I know it's the most horrific lesson that our children will ever learn. Certainly when you go to college to become an educator, it's not because you wish to become a child's first line of defense against violence. In the many ways that teaching is a thankless job, and I know that it is because I was raised by two of them. Knowing that your student's safety is at your mercy has got to be a tough pill to swallow. Last week, prior to the tragic event in Nashville, my 8-year-old was having a particularly hard time leading up to the drill. That's why I'm emotional. It was the first time she had truly grasped why the drills are necessary. And it really hit her quite hard, and me too. She is now frightened to go to the bathroom during school. And she asked what would happen to me if this happened while I'm at pickup or drop off. Needless to say, last week I was a mess before letting her go to school every day. I wanted to personally thank her teacher, Mrs. Caitlin Kelly, for answering all of her questions and putting her little mind at ease when I couldn't be there to do so.
Mrs. Stewart, I know it's a sensitive topic, but
I know.
could you just please
I lastly
wrap it
want
up?
to thank Ms. Ake for letting me know that Vivian was safe and doing just fine after the drill. I'm thankful for the teachers who are willing to step
Mrs.
in.
Stewart, I just ask you not to
I'll
say
say
the names
I'm
of
sorry.
as I previously stated.
During this topic, really.
Ms. Stewart, please address
Anyway,
me.
thank you to the teachers again. Last week was really hard for me as a mom. I'm sure it was harder for you. And just thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Daniel Haggerty.
Before I proceed and start the clock, could you hold a moment? Could I turn my 3 minutes over to Josh to finish his comments?
We got to stick with the list.
So the answer is no?
Yes.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind starting then, now that I have clarity. Thank you. So this is completely uncomfortable. If you have minors listening online, you may want to stop and take them out of the room. If you are in here and you are at all uncomfortable, feel free to leave. I'm going to exercise my First Amendment right to continue what Josh was talking about and read to you all some of the information that can be found in our Hermon High School library in the book Sex Plus Learning, Loving and Enjoying Your Body. And if you can't tell by the wavering in my voice, this is completely uncomfortable to me, but I feel people need to know what exists. So in this book, there are illustrations on a page of fingering, rubbing the clitoris, fingering, making a V around the clitoris, a hand with 2 fingers inside the vagina, and an illustration of a vibrator and shower head. That picture is on page 161. There's discussion about vibrators, rabbits, G-spot vibrators, magic wands. I don't usually vibrate. I'm like shaking like a leaf here. Discussion about the pull-out method, withdrawal. The pull-out method is exactly as it sounds. The partner with the penis pull out before ejaculating. Because as it turns out, the pull-out method can actually be incredibly effective. The preventing pregnancy, freaking 96% if it's done correctly. Rule of thumb on is better than in. I'm so sorry. Here are a few ways to make the pull-out method more effective. Talks about oral sex on a penis, aka blowjobs. I had one idea with a blowjob was until I started watching porn. You can begin by using your mouth, hand or your mouth, but whichever it is, make sure it is well lubricated. Work up some saliva in your mouth and lick your partner's penis to lubricate it up. Using your mouth with your tongue flat, gently lick and suck the head of the penis. You can use your hand to simultaneously stroke. All right, moving on. I think you get the idea there. Talks about all the positions that are available in great detail, as far as missionary, scissor, doggy, front-facing, spooning, reverse spoon. I'll move on to the next. It goes into great detail about butt sex. If there is a God, she must have had a sense of humor, considering that the male G-spot is in the butt. There are illustrations depicting several objects with a butt sticking up in the air, and the label, should I put that in my butt? On that, sure, side of the image, finger, penis, toys with flat base. On the nope side are anything without a flared base.
Can you please wrap up, Mrs. Haggerty?
I am happy to end this discussion. I think you all got the point. This is just one of many books that go into great detail.
Thank you. That takes us to C, full year 24 budget workshop.
All right. The following presentation is the first draft of the proposed 23, we call it the FY24, but I like to use 23-24 so that you know when it's starting in the fall and then obviously progressing through the 23 and 24 school year. I'd like to start with, we believe that the following budget does some of these are some of the notable things that this budget accomplishes. As we progress through the budget, there will certainly be items that we'll talk about that are, this is not an all-inclusive list. However, just want to highlight some of the things that this budget captures, or the proposed budget captures, excuse me. One of the things that it does is it adds new staff here at the high school. As many of you are aware from conversations either at the finance committee or even from last year, one of our goals was to increase the staff here at Hermon High School. We know from the EPS the ED 279 last year, that we are right at the cusp of what the state requires for essential programs and services. And obviously one of the major focuses, and I think that in particular our business office, just want to say thank you to Jamie and Shauna in our business office, just have done a really wonderful job at figuring out how to increase the tuition rate. And a lot of that comes through spending and funding out of the appropriate lines, and those lines in particular for tuition come, as no surprise, out of the high school. And so what this budget does is it continues to add to the high school positions that are both needed, and we hope that will obviously help at least maintain the tuition rate that's up about $1,400 this year to just over $9,900. So the three positions that I'm referencing here are moving from federal to local, so they are currently in our school, or they are working with our high school students, but they are federally funded through either ARP money or through ESSA money. It accommodates, we have three distinct collective bargaining units. We have a support staff, which would include positions like bus driver, custodian, clerical, food service, that would be the major maintenance and grounds. We have obviously the educational technician, which would be Ed Tech 1s, 2s, 3s, and that would include both special education ed technicians, and that would include regular education ed technicians. Obviously a lot more special ed than there are regular ed, but that includes both of those groups. And then we obviously have the teachers collective bargaining unit, and so we have stepped increases, and in particular last year we made a pretty significant stride in both our benefits package and our wage increases for our support staff. This year we feel that we're putting forward a pretty competitive offer for our educational technicians, and then one of the major challenges is making sure that our teachers are compensated fairly, and we want to make Hermon an attractive place for those teachers to come to. It's a competitive region when you look at some of the sending high schools that are 5 miles away, 10 miles away, whatever it might be, Bangor, Brewer, Hamden, Orono, Old Town, and so making sure that that's a competitive wage and benefit scale. And then obviously our district and system administration, from people in the office, both at central to our administrators across the district, as well as the support staff that are in some of those areas that don't fit or fall into the different collective bargainings. It captures all instructional and supply requests. The one thing that I would like to note there, the school committee has been very adamant. I think it's been several years, but this year we made it a primary focus to make sure we as a district are supplying most of the essential supplies to students. That's in particular, that's at that K-8 level. One of the things that we are trying to do is we're trying to not send home the lists of $150 worth of supplies to 3 different families on August 1st. We understand that if we are going to be building this budget, and I appreciate the school committee really standing behind that, we don't want to do that to our families. Now that doesn't mean that there will not be some supplies like the specialty projects that you might get in a science class where you have to go out and buy a trifold poster stand or something like that. But this is going to cover things like tissues, Clorox wipes, crayons, pencils, notebooks, comp books, things of that nature. So this budget, captures those. It continues to reduce our undesignated fund. You'll see this in one of the very last slides in this presentation. We had an undesignated fund at the start of this summer, 2022, concluding the 2022 budget of over $3.5 million, and you'll see that that's slowly being whittled down, and you'll see the plan for that. And then it does include the addition of a school resource officer, which I'll speak a little bit more to in detail when we get to that cost center. I'd like to highlight the timeline. I really appreciate the principals and directors taking opportunities to meet with me in and around February break, just before, just after. And what we do is we spend a significant amount of time looking at those requests, in particular personnel requests. We really look at how many staff that We currently have what we would like to add if they're additional, or in this case, do we want to roll over some of these federal positions? And we look at those ratios. We try to project to the best of our ability what might be coming into pre-K, what might be coming into kindergarten, what's coming into 9th grade. And then we begin to go through that process of, is this a giant wish list, or is this a need, or is this somewhere, perhaps it's in between. If I get this many students next year, I need it. If I don't, then I can make, and we have a lot of tough conversations, honestly, early in that process about wish lists versus needs. We then began the finance committee. I think those dates are right. I apologize if they're a day off, but we had 2 finance committee meetings. And again, I just want to take the opportunity to thank the 2 town councilors, Danielle Haggerty and John Snyder, and then Mr. Barry, the town manager, for participating in that process. And we had 2 finance committee meetings where we discussed many of the same principles, looking at the revenues, looking at the expenses, getting feedback into, again, federal rollover versus cutting versus, how much revenue are we getting. And I can't tell you how much I appreciated them participating, as well as our 2 committee members, Mrs. Euler and Mr. Keith, in that process. Here we are, April 3rd. This is the overview. So this is the workshop. We'll then obviously have the opportunity to hear public comment after I move through the entire thing, and then we'll go to first reading. We are still waiting on some finalization from the town as far as when I need to get this to them and present, so that they can move forward with the appropriate motions and budget town. I think it's called a validation referendum. So just making sure we follow that timeline. So right now the plan is to bring this back to you all on May, I believe it's May 1st is our school committee meeting in May, but we may be asking you to have a special meeting to consider the second reading sometime in late April, depending on what that timetable looks like. So what we have here is we have the outline of what the population has done here in Hermon. And remember, this is the school enrollment population. So what we have is we have our 2019-2020 population. You then see a massive dip in our 2020. And for those of you in the back, the 3 color codes, red, orange, and yellow, those are the individual buildings. The green's the total population. You can see in 20, and let me back up one step. The populations shown are what the October 1 enrollments are at 20, 21, 22, and 22, 23. 23, 24 is a projection of what the October 1 enrollment is going to be. However, when we move into the ED 279, which is the next slide, the population is not calculated on the October 1 enrollment. It is calculated on a 2-year average of the October 1 enrollment. So we're not getting money based on the same numbers, but I like to show the actual population and then the average in which we're getting subsidy for. So you can see that in 2021, we had quite a dip. That was the year we were coming out of COVID. We had a lot of uncertainty in respect to what was going to be happening in the schools. Were we going to be masking? Were we going to be every other day? And so our enrollment took quite a hit. And over the last 2 years, you can see that our enrollment has steadily increased. We went to 1361 in October of 2021, and then we went to 1,393 students in this fall's October 1 count, October 1, 2022. We anticipate, based upon Caravel's numbers, based upon where our kindergarten is trajectorying right now, if that's a word, where it's projecting, I should say, not trajectorying, we think we'll be in that 14-20 range, averaging about 30 students a year, or just over 2% population growth. So I'm going to exit because I know you probably cannot see that the first page of the ED 279. I'm going to pull it up in a different format. Okay. So this is the ED 279. if you need some light reading tonight, and you can just go to a Google bar and type in ED 279 Maine. You can look at any school, you can look at several of the last years, and you can, like I said, you can select Hermon 24 budget, and you can pull this up, and you can see the 5-6 pages that we all wait for with eager anticipation in January. So the 1361, like I said earlier, I'm going to stand up for this part just so that I can, is that all right with you?
I'll try to project as loud as I can. So you can see here that this is our October 1 count in 21 and our October 1 count this year. They then take those two numbers. So this is how many students we have, 1393, but the average that they're giving us money on is based on 1377. So we're not getting money for all 1393, right? So there's a discrepancy there. So they do that for a variety of reasons. In Hermon, it hurts us because we are gaining students above our average. However, in many other districts who are losing students in municipalities that are experiencing negative population decline, obviously it helps stop the bleeding, for lack of a better term. So we get 1,377 students is what we get subsidy on based upon these two averages. Next year, the 1,393 will be right here, and we anticipate there being roughly 1,420 in that line, and they'll take that to your average and so on and so forth, and then obviously we'll project out again when that occurs. So the notable change is obviously if you look at the averages, 1377 last year, I believe our average was 1313. We are up an average of 58 students in our enrollment this year. And scroll down here a little bit. Well, let me just highlight one other thing. You can see, I mentioned earlier, what they'll do is they'll take the number of students that you have, they'll break it down by grade level bands, pre-K, K, 1 through 5, 6 through 8. So it doesn't matter that we have a 5-8 school. They break it into these bands, the state, when I say they, I mean the state of Maine. And what they do is they say, based on the number of students you have at the different bands, they say you should have, for essential programs and services, you should have 84.29 teachers. Mr. Walsh and I are still trying to figure out where the 29 comes from. It's a challenging model to use. It makes sense to somebody in Augusta. And so we actually have 86.1 total teachers. And so you can see that we have just about 2 more teachers than is essentially required to fund and run a high school, or for that matter, all of Hermon schools, because that's a pre-K to 12 number. And why I would encourage you to go look at some other school districts is that you will see that Hermon is, and has historically been, a very good value. You can go to Caravel, which is RSU 87, you can go to Old Town, you can go to Orono, you can go to Bangor, and you will see a significant more number of teachers than what EPS allows for. Now, I'm not advocating for significant more, I just like to put it in a framework of what is the region doing. And there's some districts like us that are very close to what their essential programs and services say they should have. And this is the last thing I'll highlight, and I'll sit back down again so you can hear me on the mic. So what we have this year is we are getting $779. The state says we should get a subsidy of $77.90 for all our students K-8, pre-K-8, excuse me, pre-K-8. And we should get a subsidy of $8,267 for our 9 through 12 students. Why does that matter? Well, go back to the slideshow and show you another slide.
And these are notable changes in the ED 279 this year. Taking those same numbers, if you look at last year, we had 2022, 2023, we had 769.5 pre-K to 8 students. Remember, that's our average. And we received $7,295 for those students. This year, we have 798.5 students, which is an increase of 29 students. And the number is $495, the state subsidy number is $495 more. So not only do we get 29 more students at 7,000 and change, but we also increased the average of state subsidy by $495. That is the same line of thinking, or the same math that happened at the 912 level. We had 549.5 at 7,700, and this year we have 578.5 at $8,200, which is an increase of $505. So on the whole, the ED 279 shows us that we're up 58 students, and we're up an average of $500 for those 58 students. Now, it's not $500, that's the average of state subsidy. So we're up 58 students at roughly $8,000 a student. So Mr. Keith prepared, and he's going to come forward and speak to a couple of the slides that he worked on.
So as we pulled this recommendation together, one lens that we wanted to look through was through the lens of inflation and population increases, as Mike could just walk you through. So building that recommendation or looking through that lens, we wanted to start with the full year 23 total expenditures budget. So this is building from a year-to-year perspective. So we started with $17.5 million, which was our budget last year. Our SIPS projects and our reserves are typically one-time in nature. So when we did this calculation, we didn't want to factor in the population increases and inflation related to the SIPs. So we pulled that out. So our total expenditures normalized for last year were $16.88 million. So if we take that total expenditures and we add in the 2% population increase that we're anticipating for next year, that gets us to a total increase we would expect, all other things considered, for this year of $17.24 million. From there, you can see over to the right, it's very small, is a chart for the U.S. inflation rate. So it starts from January of 2022 and goes through February of 2023, which is the latest reported inflation. So the latest reported inflation for February is 6%. So we layered in here the 6% inflation to get us to a recommended budget, again, all other things considered, of $18.28 million. And that's, if you can't see, it's the middle bar. Up. Yeah, right here. Yep. So from this line, we wanted to add in a few items that would not be considered when we look at population increases or inflation. And one area we as a budget subcommittee wanted to make sure we stressed was on school safety, both school safety from an external threat perspective and school safety from an internal threats or bullying and harassment. So there's going to be two lines in here that really focus on student safety. Micah addressed the first one on resource officer. We had talked about this this time last year, and the plan was to federally fund that. Micah has addressed this a handful of times now with some staffing, addressing the staffing issues, but I think we're getting close to having that staffed now. But what we're doing here is moving that from federally funded to state and local funded. So that's one additional resource above inflation with an estimate of $115,000. And you'll see another line on school safety. I'll point to it here. It's the high school safety and attendance monitor. So again, looking for ways to strengthen our child's safety, again, both externally and internally. We feel it's appropriate to add this safety and attendance monitor at the high school. Between those two resources, we can address the concerns I've heard from parents and administrators about the uptick in behavior at all of our schools. That ranges from bullying. I mean, none of our kids should be pushed repeatedly in the hallway. None of our kids should have their food taken off of their plate at lunchtime. So hopefully these two positions can address that and hopefully as well help with any parking lot issues we may have both from overcrowding or issues at the high school. All right, so moving on, second line under additions above inflation is the high school interventionist. So this is one of the resources that we had added previously, currently working in the high school, but we need to move that from federally funded to state and local funded at $69,000. There will be two lines in here that will fluctuate up and down based on specific student needs. So it's speech and psychological services for $68,000, and then the Hermon High School Acadia Health Services for $35,700. So again, those are based on expected student needs this coming year. Next line is laptop purchases. Our laptop purchases, we are now 1-to-1. So we are now having to fund, previously we funded those purchases through federal funds. We will be funding those laptops this year for the freshman class, incoming freshman class through state and local, so it's $56,000. There's two lines on here for the alternative education program that we added last year and funded through federal funds. There's the alt ed teacher, $54,000, and alt ed tech for $41,000. For those of you who were here for the subcommittee, the finance subcommittee meeting, Principal Walsh commented that he found this program to be very valuable. I think he estimated potentially saving 9 students from not graduating. So I see this as valuable, and I'm going to recommend, or we're going to recommend as a subcommittee, that we continue that program. But it does need to move from federal funding to state and local funding. And lastly, we have about $54,000 of miscellaneous other charges. We have a change in staffing for an audit that will cause an additional cost. We are looking to add, isn't the right word, Superintendent Grant, help me with what we're doing there. It's helping fund those students who want to be participating in girls hockey, to fund them in another district, correct?
It's a shared cost with other,
Okay.
it's kind of like a co-op, it's a shared cost that we take on with a variety of other regional high schools.
So just so there's no confusion, we're not adding a girls hockey team to Hermon High School at this point. It's to help them play in other districts. And then we have additional bus lease costs. So all of those additions above inflation are $547,000, which build us to a total recommended expenditures budget of $18.8 million. We're going to add in $256,000 from our reserves and CIP projects, and all of that $256,000 is related to the Hermon Athletic Complex, the track and football field, which brings us to a total recommended budget of $19,084,199, and that's up 9% year to year. So looking at this recommended budget in a bit of a different lens versus inflation and population increases, let's just look at all the material additional expenses we're looking to add here. All of our payroll are summarized in the top line. This will address.
Is there a way to zoom in? I can't see any of this. No, it's not that I can't see. It's like literally just so small. Is there a way to zoom in on the screen? No?
I don't think so.
I can see it from here. Might need a better angle.
Yeah, if you want, you can come up front. I'll try to talk to the numbers. So, are you okay? Do you want to move so you can see it, or?
Sure.
Okay.
I truly can't see it at all. No, that's okay. I'll sit. Sorry. I just trying to write it down.
Okay, so the first line captures payroll changes, and that's going to also include the 3 bargaining unit contracts that Mr. Grant just talked about. The total payroll changes is $1.27 million. Next line are those positions we're looking to move from federal funding to state and local funding. It's the interventionist and the 2 alt ed teachers at Tech for $164,000. The additional requested positions, the resource officer, both of these are addressing the safety of our students. Totals $181,000. And then the other increases, I talked about the speech and psychological services for $68,000, Now, the previous chart, you didn't see the fuel and electricity, the general instructional supplies, because a lot of that was captured through inflation. But fuel, inflation, we're up $65,500 between fuel and electricity. Fuel per inflation is up 9% year to year, and electricity is up 13% year. I'm sure many of you have seen that in your personal lives as well. And our general instructional supplies would certainly be impacted by inflation and population increases. So this line, under $63,924 for general instructional supplies, is going to capture the 6% inflation. It'll capture the 2% population increase. And it's also going to address what Mr. Grant addressed earlier of lessening the burden on our families for instructional supplies. The last three we addressed in the previous chart: laptop purchases, the Acadia Health Services, and audit and girls hockey. So that builds to a total of $1.945 million of additional expenses, excluding CIP, so the track. So if we take on the right side, you see the 16.8, which is full year 23 current budget less the reserves. We add in the material changes and the CIP project is to the 19.08 million recommended budget. So this leads us into the revenue streams. This is a year-to-year build. So total revenue budget, we're recommending being up 9% year-to-year. That's going to be at the bottom right in blue. Our state revenues are up 16%. You can see here. You want to help? Our state revenues are up higher. 16%, and our total local revenues, that's the burden on the Hermon taxpayers and sending schools, is 3%, up 3%. You'll also notice here are the full year 24 reserve that we're recommending is $256,000. It's down $378,000 from last year, and that $256,000, as I mentioned before, is all related to the athletic complex. Tuition revenue is up $610,000. That's up 26% year to year. So there's two lines on secondary tuition and special education tuition. So the tuition revenue is revenue we receive from our sending schools. Mr. Grant, you want to take a second on all the work that Jamie had done to...
Well, I don't really know all the work that Jamie did. Jamie just presented this plan and said, I think this will help increase our tuition. And I came in and talked her up and talked about it at the town council meetings. And I did what a good leader does. I say, go do it and don't tell me unless it's successful. And she was very successful. We were able to, and again, I have always used the term manipulate. I've been told that's not a good term to use. But what we were able to do, and in particular, again, this is what Jamie was able to do, was when you start to pull back on spending out of different sources, especially when you think you're saving money and you're pulling money out of SIPS projects at the high school, when you're pulling teachers out of the high school, when you make cuts, you're not getting revenue for those, and you're not able to charge tuition based on that. And so Jamie was able to come up with some mock formulas. And when we started doing the projects, the paving project, the roof project, when we added in teachers last year, we saw the revenue increase from roughly $8,400 to $8,500 a student, which was actually down. How much was it down when I came in last year? 700 a student, something like that. I mean, that was a huge hit in our revenues. For us, tuition's a big number. We have 270 some odd students in any given year coming over from RSU 87, from Glenburn, and then 13 or 14 other singleton, a couple from Bangor, and a couple from Brewer, and a couple from, whatever, some of these outlying areas. And so when we lose $700 a student, that's a big deal. So what we were able to do through hiring teachers at the high school, putting the appropriate funding through the high school lines, when their tuition got calculated, our tuition rate jumped dramatically. It jumped, I believe it was just over $1,400. So our tuition rate this year is $9,947. I think that's right. And when you calculate that on 270, 275 students, that's a massive increase from 2.1 last year to 2.6, 2.7. We don't take it to 100%. It would not be responsible for us to say, we got 276 kids, we're getting $9,947. What's that number? Let's put it into the revenues. But what we try to do is take it to the 90th percentile range and build the budget with that amount, just in case we have students in some of those tuitioning towns not come, drop out, whatever the rate, maybe the rate falls $100 per student, something like that. And that's something that we're going to be very cognizant of this year, is maintaining that tuition rate at that 99, keeping that at that 9,900 range. And actually, we're going to try to move it up a little bit. I don't think we'll see a $1,400 increase this year. We would do that to you guys over in 87, maybe. You're welcome. But it will continue to be a very strong focus for our business office. And again, thank you, Jamie. Had a great plan and did an excellent job.
Thank you. One last thing I'll hit here.
Hopefully everybody can hear me. So as I mentioned, state revenues are up 16% for us, and the local revenues up 3%. We bracketed in here the revenues from annual appropriation from Hermon taxpayer sources. So these 4 lines here would be those lines that would directly impact the mill rate for next year. If we group those 4 together, we're up $318,000. So that's up 6%, and that's in line exactly with inflation. And we do know, or we don't know, we expect town evaluation based on history to increase, but we don't know from the town how much that will be yet. But the hope is that much of this $318K increase can be covered by increased town evaluation.
Thank you, Mr. Keith. As we transition, what happens with the budget is we look at cost centers. There are 11 cost centers. And again, this is just another lens. I really appreciated the work Mr. Keith did in showing those, the baseline budget with the population increase, because that's not how, working in education, that's not how my brain works. And so I appreciate how he showed those. Many of the things that I'm going to hit are going to do the same thing. They're just going to be in writing form. So I want to just walk you through the cost centers. Again, just trying to give you as many lenses as possible as to the expenditures in this year's proposed 24 budget. So in our regular instruction cost center, this is where the 3 federally funded positions live. This is also where the addition of the new HHS attendance monitor. So remember, this is a new position, whereas the federally funded we've had, but we didn't have to pay for them out of local contributions. So that's the difference there between when we say 3 new federally funded positions, we're bringing them over to local, whereas the attendance monitor is a completely new position. We've not had it. We've heard some of the concerns from the high school administration in particular about bringing in this type of a person. And in the finance committee meetings, we felt like this was a good position to keep when we were looking at reductions. And then you also have, this is where your wages and benefits would increases would live for all regular education personnel, so all teachers basically, except for special education. This is also where the where the classroom supplies live. And you're going to see copy paper in here a couple of times. We go through a lot of paper, and paper is getting more and more expensive. How much, Jamie, do you know how much paper we order as a district? I mean, it puts you on the spot for paper, but.
I don't remember, no.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a significant amount.
Yeah, I wish I would have written that number actually down. We order a lot of paper, so when paper goes up, we feel it over they come in cases, so just the hundreds of cases that we buy. So that's the regular instruction cost center. The special education cost center, you're going to see an increase based upon similar wages and benefits. This is where the collective bargaining agreement for ed techs live. We had to come to a meeting in January because our starting level educational technicians are ones. they were below minimum wage when it increased to $13, and I believe it was 80 cents. And so our first 3 steps for our educational technicians, they weren't even being paid minimum wage. They have very poor health insurance benefit options. And so we put in a significant amount of money as we're currently negotiating, so I can't tell you what that number is. I don't want to give away my strategic bargaining, but at the same time, we know that we have a long way to go. We are way behind in both salary and benefits for our educational technicians when we look at our neighboring districts. And as Mr. Keith spoke to earlier, we have had a lot of students who have come in and have needed speech language services. It's an area that has been a tremendous need for us lately. And so we have the addition of a speech language pathologist, a contract with speech language pathology, and this is going to be mostly K4 speech language therapy. And we've also had a significant number of students who are coming in and English is not their primary language. And so we've had to increase this year, I believe, we have a tutor for ELL a couple of hours a day, and we are taking that to a full-time position to provide services to those students who, again, English is not their primary language, and that is an area that we have to obviously address. In other instruction, in this cost center, again, this isn't all the increases, but I just wanted to hit upon a significant number of them. We have our track supplies, and remember that's being offset by our revenue from the designated fund. We have our additional stipend positions. So at the next school committee meeting, I will be bringing forward proposed new stipend positions. Last year, the school committee approved, I think it was a music position and some department chair positions, and just some of those types of positions. So we have increases in those stipend positions. This is where the girls' ice hockey team lived, and thank you, Jesse. We are not starting a hockey team. We are paying and sharing the costs so that the young ladies here at Hermon High School can play hockey regionally. In student and staff support, the primary increase here is the Acadia Counseling Service contract. One of the things, we talk a lot about school safety, which we feel we've addressed a significant issue with the SRO and the monitor. We put in vape sensors this year in all the bathrooms at the high school, which have been tremendously popular with our students, with some of them. And I know Stephanie has, I believe you've been very happy with them. Yeah, she's our assistant principal and gets to deal in that world. They've been very, very helpful. One of the things that we are also trying to address, and I believe it is a direct result of COVID, is just the different challenges, whether it's anxiety, whether it's just social pressure here at school, social media pressure, bullying, just some of the things that have happened to impact our students in a negative way. And our guidance counselors, they are amazing, but they do a lot, and to ask them to take on counseling services it really is unfair. They don't have enough time. They are our 504 coordinators. They work with, they do and lead team meetings. They do college prep. They teach lessons. They're in classrooms. They're doing small groups with students. They're doing behavioral expectations. They're working with building principals. They're doing so much that the needs are so great for licensed clinical counselors. And so we're partnering with Acadia for counseling services to especially help with some of those heavy hitters where, especially with anxiety, we've noticed is dramatically climbing. And it's just the last few years have been very challenging for our students in that respect. System administration. So here we have, again, wages and benefits increases, legal fees, the audit and the audit consultant. Jamie, what was the audit consultant again? That's Hank, correct?
That's Hank, yes.
Yeah. So, and what does Hank do?
So, because we had to change from the auditor we had previously, there's really a lack of available auditors for governmental So we were able to get a consultant that would write all of our financial statements for us. And then we have to have an auditor actually do all of the compliance testing and certify the report to send to the Department of Education. So now instead of just having one firm do the whole thing, we've got a consultant doing one, and then a CPA doing the remainder. And this is the same model that the town is utilizing. We have the same auditor, same consultants. It's all the same process as the town.
And when, for example, when I share the undesignated projections, that's something that our audit consultant does for us. So it's not Mr. Grant preparing it, it's the actual, it's coming from our audit consultant, so. School administration, obviously you have building principals and you have assistant principals, things like that, so wages and benefits increase in that line. And there's also a significant amount of paper that comes out of the school administration side, so I included that there because, again, that price is up. Transportation, this is, most of this increase is as a result of the wages and benefits increase in that collective bargaining agreement that we did with support staff. We, as many of you know, we have our own buses, we have our own fleet, we have our own bus drivers, and we provide salary and benefits. And so we also have a mechanic on site, so we have our own bus mechanic, we have our own garage, and so we have obviously a significant amount of cost in maintaining all of those items. So between our transportation director, bus drivers, mechanic, etc., that's the primary people, right? People is the primary reason for that increase. Facilities and maintenance, similar to what I was just saying regarding transportation. And this is why I like the different lenses in respect to the cost center. So I'm going to caution you because it looks like it's down, and it is, but it's a little deceptive.
This is the line that we had 5 very large SIPS projects come out of this line last year. So this line includes about $630,000 paving, roof, boiler, fuel tank, well at the elementary school. So this line, remember that's of that 2.6 million, 630 some odd thousand, give or take, I think it was 634 when it was all said and done, was funded from reserves. So that line, without that reserves last year, was really more like $2 million. So if you look at it that way, if you flatline that, pull that, all those projects out, that line is actually up about $400,000. So I know it looks down, but we don't have nearly the number of SIPS projects this year as we did last year. So I don't want it to look like that is the number that's going to continually go down like that. That's not, it's a little bit deceptive.
So similar to what I was saying regarding transportation, this is where wages and benefits also live for all of our custodians who, by the way, do a fantastic job in the buildings. And I can't tell you how much we are appreciative of the work that they do. It's funny, when I was talking to Sheriff Morton last week regarding our SRO, he said, I want my deputies and my officers who are going to be serving you to know the principals really well and know the head custodians really well. Those are the two people that he specifically, or the two groups of people, because they just have such an intimate knowledge of the building, its functions, how it operates, and they do a fantastic job. We have great people, and a lot of people comment to me, you know, they can't believe that, for example, this building is pushing 30 years old. They just do an excellent job, and frankly, Brian, we used to have a lot more here working, didn't we, at night? We used to have 5, and now it's down to 3, and they continue to do a really, again, they do a great job, so really appreciate that. This is also where our custodial and maintenance supplies live. There is a little bit of athletic complex funding coming out of this line as well. Remember, that's offset by a revenue. This is where the school resource officer position is. And that's because it's considered Jamie, what's the title? What's actually considered? It's a contracted service,
It's considered safety.
ground safety,
Ground,
correct? Yeah. So it's actually not a payroll position, it's a contracted service, and it's considered a grounds and safety. So that's why the officer lives in that cost center. And then, as Mr. Keith alluded to earlier, we have seen, we use a lot of oil, and we burn a lot of electricity, and you've probably seen in your own homes, electricity is up a little bit. So our energy costs are also going up. Sorry that one came out so big. There's really nothing to report here except that this is what the town bonded for the elementary wing addition. So this is the debt and principal and debt interest payment to the PADS extension. That drops about $9,000 to $10,000 every year. As the principal gets paid down, obviously the interest is a little less. So this year that payment is $581,731. And then with local food service, this is the second year in a row that we are asking for, we dropped it from 65 to 50 last year. We, due to some federal and then state regulations, we have been able to claim a significant number of our lunches here and our breakfasts here. Jamie, stop me if I say anything incorrectly, because I don't know this program inside and out yet. But due to the number of claims, we believe that we will be able to maintain in the black with $50,000 due to the number of claims that we're able to report every month for our students who take lunch, both lunch and breakfast, excuse me. And so that brings us to the budget history. You can see from 19 and 20, 2021, et cetera, et cetera. You can move through the budget years, and you can see our increases, both in total and in percentage. And then Mr. Keith already highlighted this, but we wanted to highlight it again. For many, what is going to be required of additional local is one of the key, the things that people pick up on, and rightly so. So what we are requesting of the town this year is $50,000 from local food service. From an EPS standpoint, you're looking at the valuation of $4.157 million. For local debt, $581,000, and for additional local, last year was 1.1, and this year we're making a request of 1.289 for a total of $6,078,865. So what that means is we are requesting $318,000. I have 11. Did you have 10? I can't remember what your slide said. Sometimes we round up and sometimes we round down on cents. I believe it is 318.10, but I would have to check. There's some change in there, so I might have rounded up on that. So that's it. We're asking for $318,011 in local additional this year. Okay, so this is a little small, but it's pulled from our audit consultant. So I'm going to stand up for this one.
And Jamie, please stop me again if I'm wrong. Thank you. So what we obviously spent some time discussing at town council, and then obviously as a school committee last year, was the undesignated fund. In 21, there was a significant amount of money added to the undesignated fund because of the tremendous amount of ARP funding that came in and ESSA funding from the federal government. And so what happened was the past administration used a lot of that money to buy local stuff. And as a result of that, it left money over, and you can't just carry it forward. You put it in the undesignated fund. So at the end of last year, we had $3.5 million in our undesignated fund, which represents a significant percentage of our budget, 21.8%. So that was too high. And so what the council asked us to do was they asked us to use a portion of that to offset the regular budget. And so we used $1.2 $1,228,000 in this year's budget. That obviously decreases our undesignated fund down to $2.2 million. This year, this budget that you just saw presented, we're continuing in that model. We are using or proposing to use $1 million from our undesignated fund to build this budget. So this budget assumes a $1 million contribution, or pull, I should say, from the undesignated fund, which gets us to 7.96% of the budget. And next year, and I had to do this, I showed this at the town council meeting last, I think it was either May or June, but regardless. And then the plan would be to use $770,000 to build the 25 budget. And that would bring our undesignated fund down to $509,000 in another basically 2 years if everything went obviously according to plan. And the methodology here is to back off on how much we pull by about $250,000. You can see we used 1.2 here. We'd like to back that off to about $1 million, and then back off again another $250,000, somewhere in that ballpark, down to $770,000. And we feel like, obviously, if we can get an undesignated fund, or have an undesignated fund of about $500,000, and obviously our budget's probably going to be in the $20 million range next year, that would be a responsible amount of money to have in our undesignated fund. So that's kind of the methodology there. You can see the starting number. You can see what we used for the budget this year. You see what we plan on using to build the 24 budget, and then our plan to build the 25 budget, and our ending total based upon those three numbers going the way that we planned.
I think I have one more. Okay, yeah.
Then we have our reserve accounts. We have, I believe it's 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 reserve accounts with the town. And so anytime, in the past, if you've ever watched the history of Hermon schools and how the budgets work, sometimes money would be put into these accounts, whether it was leftover money or it was intentionally saved for. These are where our reserve accounts stand as of October of 31, 2022. They gain interest, that's why there's small changes, and then sometimes there's a pull for whatever the cost might be. When we use the term, we're paying for that out of a reserve account. For example, we have the athletic complex reserve account, $300,000. We have an enrollment stabilization reserve account of $100,000, and so on and so forth. We have a bus reserve account of, follow that line, $87,000. So you can see that we have, is that right? That unemployment reserve right? I think we're off one. I think that should be flipped. I don't think the unemployment reserve is 222,000, right? No, that's, so those are inverse, correct? I just mixed them on the spreadsheet.
I'll double check. I'll have to double check. I don't have the sheet with the reserves.
Okay. So if this is incorrect, we will edit that, because we took them from a spreadsheet from the town and put them on our own spreadsheet. So I'll check that. I don't feel like that's right. I feel like that's. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong line. We have a fuel reserve account of $222,000. I just didn't look across the right line. We have an unemployment reserve of $42,000, and then school capital improvement. Obviously we plan on with that $600,000 and some other things that we don't anticipate having any money left in that reserve account. So that's where our reserves sit at a total of $782,000 as of 10/31/2022. So I think one of the questions is, obviously we feel like this budget does quite a bit, and what we would be looking to do in future budgets, we would be looking to add 1 teacher at the middle school. This is going to be federally funded next year, and so the plan would be to bring that teacher over. Tonight I'm going to be bringing forward a candidate for network engineer. This is going to be federally funded. and we would like to bring that over to local. And then we still have and are very pleased with having health services at all 3 buildings. Currently, it's paid at an LPN rate. We're just very fortunate and blessed to have somebody that is a nurse, but will work for an LPN rate because she wants to work in Hermon, and we're really appreciative of that. And so the plan next year would be to bring these 3 positions forward from federal to local, and then we would have to look at a couple of pretty significant capital improvement projects. I see this as something that could potentially happen next year, the building of 25 budget, and then I think we have to start taking a serious look at a couple of very big items for capital improvement, air quality heating systems here at Hermon High School, and then a bus garage replacement, and looking at bringing, or I should say not bringing, building a new bus garage down at the middle school site. So those are just some of the things that I feel like we'll be bringing forward, or we look to bring forward, that this budget obviously does not address at this time, but obviously just from a future planning standpoint, I'd like to highlight what we would be looking to do next year. That's it. Do I have anything else? That's it.
We can have questions now. Comments, questions?
You could allow public input too, or it's a workshop.
We're going to do that in a little bit on the agenda.
Well, according to the rules, workshop requires and allows public input.
We're going to get to the public input.
It's listed as a workshop.
Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have some. My question is regarding the speech and psychological contract. So I understand that psychological testing is typically contracted out, but so the speech and language, as you mentioned, was K4. Is that for a direct speech therapy to happen, and you're doing that consultative, contractually, instead of hiring someone to do that because you only need part-time, or?
That right now is a 3/5 position contract that we are proposing. Right?
Correct.
Yep.
So it's not specifically for testing or like augmentative communication, or it is?
Go ahead, Cindy. You can speak to it.
So it is, we're getting more and more kiddos that are requiring augmented communication devices. And so it really is, we have somebody that's working with us right now who really has a strong background with augmentative communication systems. I can't remember honestly, 7, 8, or 9 kiddos are using devices right now, which requires a very specialized skill and knowledge base. And so it's really to work with those kiddos and with direct SDI specific direct instruction and consulting the team and all of those things. So that's really what that is.
And there was some, I wanted to just make note then too, I did like the way that you presented everything, it was really clear. But I just wanted to ask about slide 22 in the history of local contribution. The requesting at the very end where it says asking the town for $318,011 or $10. That there is a set amount though that the town is allotted to give to the school, like it's not negotiable, right? Isn't that like 200-something thousand anyway? So it's just a little additional. I don't have my notes from the last meeting, but I was just remembering that.
So if you look at this, the revenues behind you, you will see that the town contribution this year is $4.1 million. So if you look at it from that perspective, that of that $318,000, and I was told that this is not like nice line, and I'm not trying to not be nice, but the town has to give us an additional $152,000 this year, according to the state, for essential programs and services. So I feel like it's just, we should phrase it in a way that we are asking for an additional $318,000, but if you break it down, it's $152,372.33 that the town would be required to help keep, right, it's gonna trigger the state funds. So they're responsible for 4.157, which is right here, and I hope people in the crowd can see this okay. It's a little small, but maybe I can blow it up a little bit. Is that a little better? Yeah. So you can see that that is an increase from last year of 152,000. You can see a decrease in the debt service. You can see an increase in what we are asking for, which is from 1.1 to 1.289, which is an increase of 175,000. And so if you take those three numbers, you can, yeah, so Mr. Keith was right. It's $318,010.86.
And also that will then, utilizing those funds, as you mentioned, would bring us back down under the 9% that we need to hit.
If we use the undesignated funds.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
And regarding the ELL hire, is that a full-time ELL or, wow?
Yeah, that's full-time.
I remember we used to just contract out for a few hours, right?
Used to just be for some
Right.
testing, and now
Yeah.
it's increased a lot. And obviously, if you watch the news or read the paper, you see a lot of districts struggling with that position due to, obviously, the influx of students who do not speak English as a primary language.
Right,
Yeah.
our immigrant population moving north.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I didn't see the network engineer in the budget for this year that you were.
Correct.
But you're proposing us, that we hire someone today.
Yes. Yep, it's
I didn't see it in the 23-24 budget.
correct. Let me go to that slide. This would be through ARP funding, ARP or federal funding, and so the plan would be to bring that forward in the 25 school year budget, but it will be funded out of federal funds this year. As well as, we have an HMS teacher, and we obviously have the LPN out of federal funds this year.
I didn't see the carry forward from 2022, or 2022 year. There was an amount, originally it was 285,000. You had proposed to us in July of a carry forward. You guys were trying to spend that down. Do you have an amount that's going to be a carry forward? Jamie might know.
Do you need it?
The slide that was shown with the FY22 fund balance, that is the number after all of, that's the final number after all of the decreases.
It would have been so helpful if this had been emailed to us, we could print it, or printed.
I'm sorry, I don't, Haley, what's the question one more time?
Well, originally we had, in this year, we had $285,000 in July, you said, of unspent funds. So I was wondering where we were at with the amount. She was doing some backwards payments for that fiscal year, so I was just wondering what the carry forward amount is currently that is going to be applied to this.
There was an overall decrease to fund balance of, was it right around $500,000 from FY21 to FY22. So at the end of FY22, our undesignated fund balance had decreased by just about $500,000.
I don't mean the undesignated. We had like a
unspent money from the 22
From the
to 23 budget.
budget year, yes.
That's depending on the audit, isn't it? Sorry if I.
So, okay, so when we're talking about fund balances, there's a couple classifications of them. You have what we call designated fund balances. Those are the things like our reserves, the capital reserves, the unemployment reserve, what was that, whatever the stabilization reserve is there. Those are called designated fund balances. They have a specific purpose that they are to be used for. Then you have money that is considered undesignated, but that is the money that we use to build the next year's budget. So that number is not calculated until the fiscal year has ended. It literally changes every single day. So I can run a report today and it's gonna show that we're adding $10,000 to fund balance, and I can run another one right after a payroll to show that we're gonna take another $500,000 out of fund balance. It literally changes every single day based on the money that goes out the door, the money that comes in the door for real, not budget to actual, okay? So at the end of fiscal year 22, can you go back to that slide, please, again, Micah, the one from Pam. At the end of fiscal year 22, 3.5 million is what was in the undesignated fund balance. So when they're looking at whether or not we're in compliance with the ruling through fiscal year 25 to have us beneath the 9%, we would take away what's budgeted for FY23. So that becomes $2.2 million. So at the end, that's really what the undesignated is, because the 1.2 has been spoken for at the end of fiscal year 22, okay? So then we look towards the future, FY24, we've got $1 million in the carry forward account to build the FY24 budget. We're committing to use that money to build the next year's budget. And then looking forward again, in fiscal year 25, we feel as though we can use $770,000 worth of that undesignated fund balance. So in the end, that brings us down to even beneath the 5% of what the threshold normally is, but has been increased to the 9% through the special rule. Does that answer your question?
It does not. So there was $285,000 in last year's year-end amount that we discussed in July first meeting. There was $285,000 unspent funds from that budget. My question is, how much of that is going to go towards this rollover that we can include to this budget?
The $1 million that we have, so the 2.2 is what the fund balance is at the end, because remember that number moves literally from day to day.
But the years
So the 285,000 was as of the day that I was reporting to you. So in the end, we are down to $2.2 million, which was a decrease of $500,000 from the prior year. That 285 is a moving target. So when I reported that number to you, we still had things that were being reported back to FY22.
Yes.
So in the end, $500,000 was removed from undesignated fund balance.
So you're saying you ended up spending the whole $285,000 plus additional $500,000?
We spent $285,000, and then there was, I believe, $260,000 that had been approved through warrant articles to be classified as reserves. So that makes those designated funds, it removes them from undesignated and makes them designated.
Doesn't the board have to vote to move that? You do it through a warrant article without the actual specifics?
The town, it was specific warrant articles. There were, the tax stabilization was one of them. So, and those were all part, they were on the warrant articles approved at the annual town meeting.
Okay. You didn't break out your legal costs, and obviously that's a hot button issue with our town, so I'll ask on behalf of them. Do you have the breakout of what has been spent, or what the actual, because it was bulked in with all the other numbers, what the projected line total is for that?
Let me see here. The cost center, like how much is actually designated for legal?
Yes.
I have a guess, but Jamie, do you happen to know, can you pull that number?
So for legal services, for FY '23, we only had $6,000 budgeted. For FY '24, we have $30,000 budgeted.
Okay.
30,000.
For audit services, we had $17,000 budgeted for FY '23, and that was before we knew that we were going to need to change auditors. So for FY '24, to include the consultant and the new auditor, we're up to $35,000.
From 35, correct?
From 17 to
To
35, so an increase of 18,000.
Okay, so, okay.
I did not see the school internet cost on there, and then, again, that's something I've been bringing attention to, that, you know, we're spending over $50,000 a year on the internet. I know you have some E-rate funds that are inconsistent based on whatever the numbers the E-rate has to do. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know what you mean by inconsistent. I can tell you what the internet cost is. We have a 5-year contract with First Light, and so our internet bill is $3,692 a month, and plus $218.40, plus $462. Does that sound all right, Jeff? This is what the contract says.
Yes.
So I believe it's four. I'm sorry, Jeff.
One of the things that's noteworthy about our First Light 5-year contract is that it's not simply for internet access. It also represents a build-out of fiber from the data center of the First Light in Bangor to our data center here. It's essentially a line only for us. It's rather like a private line for the Hermon School Department. And it was amortized over those 5 years. So you're looking at build-out, internet access, a small backup circuit for the district. And when I say small, I mean very small. When we're looking at the internet access for the district that's distributed to the schools, it's a gigabit per second, whereas the backup circuit is only 100 megabits per second. And also, because of our relationship with First Light, which has also been known as Oxford Networks, we've worked with them for approximately 20 years. And if you go back to the beginning of when our relationship started, the internet had an ample number of what are called IPv4 addresses. That is not the case today. So we were blessed back then to have more IP addresses than we actually needed. But we had a lot. We had 3 Class C networks available to us. We've over time given up one of those, but we have 2 now. If people who are wondering what I'm talking about, I'd say an IP address is rather like a phone number for the internet, a phone number for an internet device. It means that we can use these IP addresses for individuals outside of our network to see the services that we want them to see. An example would be our PowerSchool student information system. It has a routable IP from one of these blocks. So that's the package, but the big part of it is that fiber build-up. It's almost done. It's almost paid for at this point in time. And in speaking with First Light, the expectation is that there's going to be a radical drop in the price that they would propose as we're considering alternatives like the MSLN, as well as, I'm sure, other ISPs.
So to be very specific, we pay $462.88 a month for the customer build-out over the 5 years. We pay $218.40 for the recurring 10 megabyte, the redundant line. and we pay $3,692 over the 60-month contract for the 1 gigabyte of speed, for a total of $4,373.28 a month.
Thank you.
Yep. That contract ends on December 27th, 2023. And we will be negotiating, and I'll be bringing that to you all for, see if we can get better prices.
Again, so the E-rate, when I say it was inconsistent, because, you know, it changes each year based on however it gets calculated with the grant application. Maybe Jeff can speak to that.
I'm sorry. I was looking at
Yeah, I
something.
apologize. So I always said the E-rate helps the school, it's part of a grant, right? So you have to apply for that, and then you get some of the money back from the federal government, or?
Correct. I believe the number is, as far as that number is concerned, 60% of that number.
So, Micah, when I was looking at the budget, it changes. Sometimes it's 10,000, sometimes it's the print of it.
As far as the revenue changes.
Yeah, so you get some of that money back of this cost.
Right. I
So
don't
by
know.
inconsistent, I'm trying to predict where that number's coming from, or maybe Jeff can speak to what they granted you.
Jeff would actually turn to Jamie.
Okay.
Can I, should we make that motion now for the 9 o'clock?
Yeah, we should.
I don't mean to, before Jamie answers that question.
I'd recommend we extend for at least another 30 minutes. Can I get a motion, please? Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to extend the meeting till 9:30.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Okay, Jamie?
So I don't know the exact formula that they use off from the total. It is, I believe, 60% of the allowable costs of the internet. There is a small portion, and I feel like it's the redundancy piece that is not eligible for E-rate. We did have a change in consultants from FY '22, I believe, to '23, and they have been a little more helpful with the application process to get to maximize the benefits of that grant.
It was on the budget spreadsheet, right, of it, the amount it was going to be granted?
Yep, and the amount that is there is from our E-rate company, our E-rate consultant, off from that application.
We have that projected at $26,582.40.
The other question I had when I was looking through the stack of how things are broken out, there's a ton of spending on all sorts of platforms for this school, and we're using, I understand there's some educational networks, but I mean, it'd be great to have had this conversation at the tech committee. Is there a way to streamline some of this? Do we really need each of these things? I mean, there's like, 20,000 here, 14 there, 21 there.
I agree, and we did talk about this to a degree. So for example, well, once upon a time, we had a network that was unified on one platform. And around about the period of, well, actually just before COVID, the laptop initiative, the one-to-one laptop initiative did not start during COVID. It started probably a year before with Lenovo 300Es at the middle school. And that was remarkably popular. We were getting ready to, we had already expanded to the high school, already expanded down into the elementary school, and then suddenly we had $1 million worth of Macs and even more iPads. And this is what you were getting to, a management system just for them, and a very expensive management system at that. So we still have that problem today. The Lenovo 300Es were designed right from the beginning to take advantage of the Microsoft endpoint environment, which we are very blessed to have free here at the school department. And I'm very happy to note that Microsoft has not been sitting on its laurels and simply managing Windows devices. They have now incorporated the ability to manage Macs and iPads, and even, and I gotta see this with my own eyes to believe it, Chromebooks. So the idea here is, as we're moving forward, we could find one management system for our devices. And as we figure out what the ultimate device is for the district, this one management system could fill that role without the huge $20,000 price tag, Jan.
There's so many services, so all of the apps and the platforms and the, Seesaw and everything, I mean, it's a lot every single month that I don't know if there's a way for communication with the parents, and if we could streamline one system that we're using so we're not changing constantly how we're communicating with people, that's one.
So there.
Can I jump in here, Jeff? Thank you. So when you said platform, do you mean the device platform, or do you mean, like, are you talking about just apps? Are you talking about ThrillShare, the website? Are you talking about PowerSchool, where we do grades? Are you talking about, like?
So there,
Yeah.
is there a way to streamline, or it would be a great conversation again for tech committee, because there's lots of money for ThrillShare, or each of these different things that your apps, I guess they're apps, or
Services through our website provider.
So like elementary uses this, middle school uses this, and parents are constantly having to go in and out of things to communicate. Like, it would be great to, and it would save us money if we could find a platform that was one that could do all of it.
So I don't know how detailed you read my superintendent's reports, but one of the things that I have spoke to in the last 2 reports is that we are moving to a rooms platform through our website company, ThrillShare. And so they're the ones that have the website. They're the ones that I put out any type of like push notification, obviously most recently snow days. And there's a feature there that we are trial running this spring and into the fall called Rooms, where that will be one of the primary focuses of the school district next year, 512, is to communicate to parents on that platform, both static information, so course schedule, course syllabi, course curriculum, whatever it might be, teacher information, office hours, best way to reach me, but there's also a window that you can communicate to the teacher with, so it's not always, it doesn't have to be through email, it can be directly through Rooms. So you as a parent can pull up your Android or Apple device, log in, well, you have to download the app obviously, but then you log in and that is pulled from PowerSchool, which obviously has the child's information, has their grades, etc. And that would allow you to have your child's schedule in front of you and communicate directly with the teachers through the website that we already have. So we are working on trying to get to one platform. Unfortunately, it doesn't do grades, and so grades will continue to be in the PowerSchool platform or the Pearson platform. So there's just not, unfortunately, right now, we're not aware of a product that allows us to do everything. Communicate course information, grades, obviously, report cards, that there's not one product right now, unfortunately. But we are trying to get it to 2 primary platforms, and we're going to trial run Rooms, which is through ThrillShare, which is our website. We're going to try that this spring and into the fall.
I'll have questions for Rooms in a little bit.
I have a recommendation. Mike, if you want to go back to the reserve PowerPoint slide. Jamie will have to keep me honest here, but the unemployment reserve, because of state law, is unlikely to be used. Is that fair? So I would recommend we rename or move those funds to a new reserve for out-of-district placement for students that we may move in that we're not anticipating in maybe it's this year's budget, maybe it's a future budget, where we have to do out-of-district placement, which I believe is around $45,000 per student.
I'm not 100% sure on how the revenue comes in when it comes to like mental health services, and there's quite a huge jump in that line, and I understand the importance of that. So my question is, how does that work if children either have private health insurance or they have, is it built through main care? That's a huge number for the budget, and I just didn't know if there was other ways that that gets offset through funding.
Okay, so are you asking how, like why that is so expensive? Like why there's such a jump in the expenditure? Like, I just want to understand.
Is it purely funded through the school? So the school is basically paying for mental health services for people with no insurance? Like, I don't understand how that works, or where, is it funded, I don't know how it's funded. Is it purely through tax dollars?
So when we have a contracted service with Acadia, for example, that's something that the taxpayer is paying for through the local appropriations and programs. Yeah, so we do not bill out to main care, correct? Correct. Yeah, so we don't bill the
So
students.
they just not have health insurance? I'm trying to understand why the school's paying for it. And forgive me for not understanding, I'm not familiar with this, I'm just trying to learn. Why is the school paying for health services?
Well, you could ask, I mean, I think it's a similar, like why pay for PT and OT and speech, and I view it as the same line of we're tasked with taking
PT
care of
and
the whole
OT,
child.
are those things funded through the same tax dollars? There's no main care funding?
Yeah, we have PT on staff, we have OT on staff, speech pathologists.
So are parents
So are you
of...
fundamentally against paying for mental health counseling services?
I am not saying that at all.
Okay, no, but that's great.
But that was a very, that wasn't, come on.
Can I add some?
Sure.
To help? So those OTPT, those specific would be driven by the IEP or the Individualized Education Program. So that would be something that is through Child Find and also ADA and IDEA, the laws. We also do support, and I know this because I've worked with the guidance counselors to understand too. So there are children who might need or having a hard time within the school. So the school has decided, and it could be middle school as well, but the district as a whole has decided to support the mental health needs of the children. So let's say like your child has anxiety and they need to see a counselor to help them so that they can be in school and be, with the mission of the school and still be a productive learner in the school. They need that support. So some of the counselors it's not just Acadia, they do have a couple of other private counselors. And so when the counselors are working with the children, that contract's actually paid through the department, and those private counselors are not billing insurances. So it wouldn't be an option, like I have insurance and if it was my child, then I would say, oh, well, you could bill my insurance, I have no problem, but they're choosing not to do that as clinicians because of reimbursement rate and probably how long it takes to get paid. So that is a contract, and I think it's probably like a block contract, and I could be speaking out of turn, but to be able to say, like, me as a clinician will see this many students for this amount of money per year, and it's just during the school year, like not during the summer and things like that. So that's, I think, where that funding is coming from. I think that there probably are people who are accessing their insurance or main care for other services, but I think when they're IEP driven or even just out of concern of parents coming to the school looking for support, that Hermon has been really good at providing that.
And I wasn't sure, because I thought I saw somewhere as a revenue stream that it was main care, or...
We stopped billing main care, I believe, a year ago, maybe 2.
So I kind of feel like we're talking about a couple different things, but as far as just special education.
Okay.
So the counseling services isn't under me, but I'm special ed. And so several years ago, we were billing main care. However, the expense of that, we were paying per student and paying more. We were paying out more for it and not getting as much in. So, and it was also tying up staff's time to complete all that work, and it wasn't benefiting our students. And so we met and discussed, and it was not worth our best interest to build main care in that department.
Mr. Walsh?
Yeah, so to answer part of that question, the therapist that we have contracted with through Acadia bills main care through Acadia.
Okay.
So when they see a student that has main care, they are billing through Acadia, not through Hermon High School, not through the superintendent's office.
If they have an option.
Right, and the reason we went to that therapist, we came off COVID and we saw at levels of anxiety, depression, and other issues that we had never seen before. And what we heard from our parents, and anyone in this room who's tried to get a counselor for their child, they were being told 6 months to a year. And the reality is we had an opportunity, and we seized that opportunity to get someone in-house. They're through Acadia. So when the child is meeting with Callie, who's the therapist, she is a contracted service, but she and Acadia moved the building, not her. We added it because it was a need. Parents could not get students in to their own or try to make referrals. So that's why we added it, and that's why it's there. Her caseload is full. I wish it wasn't, to be quite frank. I wish we didn't need that position, but we do.
And this,
I just wanted to clarify that they bill main care through Acadia, not Hermon High or anything like that.
right, but like, the reality is that these are all decisions that you all have the right to make as a board, whether it's, do we want to keep alternative ed? Is that the right decision to make for 9 students? Do we want to keep mental health counseling services? Like, those are the realities of, these are tough conversations to have when you start talking about adding programs. So if we don't feel like that's the direction the board wants to move in, the board has every right to move in that, just like alternative ed, just like HHS attendance monitor, like, but that's where the money is. It's in contracted services, it's in people. And so my question is not to put you on the spot, my question is, do you feel like that's something we should not be moving on? And that's okay.
That's not at all what I'm saying.
Okay, no, but I'm saying we have to have tough conversations about positions and
I
programs.
was trying to learn more about
Okay.
the funding
Yep.
and how it works, and how it works for the communication with parents when they're not being billed and they may not be aware, and we're paying for services they may not know about. I'm just trying to understand.
I just want to clarify from the middle school point of view, and I'm sure this is true across, if a student is working with any Acadia-approved individual, all families know in Hermon Middle School, and I believe that to be the case across the district.
That is
Correct.
the same at the elementary school as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, they actually become patients or clients.
And they have to be approved by the parent
And there's
before we move forward.
consent. and-
Yep.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. To Mrs. Keiser's comments earlier, I don't have any issue with bringing public up now versus in a few minutes. Any issues? Okay. Open it up to the public.
Greg Newell, Hermon. I do want to comment on the SRO. I really think that is a greatly needed position as someone who drove in to sub at the high school and saw the craziness that the students were doing in their vehicles and the accidents that are happening there. That is needed really, really bad. I don't know if I'm going to have an opportunity later on positions, but I feel it does have to do with the network engineer. I truly believe we need one. My wife wanted to speak, but something happened where she didn't write her name down on the right list. I'm just going to say it real quick. I know we've been here a long time, but I think it really needs to be said. I'm going to read her statement. My husband and I were reading over the agenda, felt the name sound familiar, curiosity. We looked up the person recommended hire for network engineer. We wanted to find that his profile picture shows him with a full military style camouflage outfit. What truly concerns us is the nominee is holding what looks like an AR style rifle. With all the violence taking place in schools these days, is this person truly the right fit for our school? We don't know him. We don't know what type of background checks that I've done. Since you don't answer comments during public comment, we ask that you please table this approval for this new hire till the next meeting. This will allow time for you all to investigate this potential hire, inform the public of your findings, so she says ease her fears and others that might be concerned. I don't know who he is or the context of the picture. However, we all know kids searching the internet. We would hate to have a student look this person up, see this, be traumatized, not know what's going on with the picture, with this person in full military outfit and a weapon. We know kids get in trouble about this all the time. We hope your due diligence in vetting this potential new hire and informing us, her and others of your findings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Noel, I do want to say, and I apologize to your wife if she's still here. She is on the list, and I missed her. I think I must have seen the Newell and just thought that we'd hit Newell. So I do sincerely apologize for missing her, and said if she's not here, send my apologies to her.
No problem. She's like, I don't know.
She is on here. Completely my fault.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I'll let her know. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Thank you, Danielle Haggerty Hermon. I have two hats I want to wear. One is I truly appreciate the collaborative nature that you've worked with the council in this budget, and Jesse, I appreciate you taking the phone calls, Jamie, the emails and phone calls, and also you, Mike, as well as including us, and it has been very beneficial and I think helpful. I see a lot of the asks that I've had come through this on behalf of the council, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate the clarity and the detail that you guys went to, and I know this is a really long meeting. I think for a $19 million spend, it's worth this time. And to those of you that have asked great questions, both in the meetings before and tonight, thank you for asking the questions. Again, it's $19 million that we're talking about here, so I think the questions are worth asking. I did just want to circle back to the therapy. So now I'm changing my council hat off. Danielle, resident with a child who's a senior, not going at this school, but I have a child who's a senior in high school. And I just want to clarify on the therapy piece. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I would advocate it to the nth degree, so please don't misinterpret my questions as anything other than that. I just want to get clarity because I feel like I'm getting a few different answers to the questions that Haley asked, and being in the healthcare industry, I just want to dig in a little deeper. One is, I understand the difference between IEP services and non-IEP services, and so I am assuming that we're talking about services provided outside of an IEP.
That's the counseling and the therapy that Mr. Walsh was talking about.
Yes.
The counselor, the Acadia counselor
Yes,
therapist that we have is not in an IEP.
Okay. Secondly, I hear that we're paying a contracted fee, but then I also hear that they're billing. So I'm confused as to, are we billing, is Acadia billing insurances? Are we filling in for people that don't have insurances? How is it that it's both taxpayer funded and also insurance funded? Because that's not
I
possible.
think he means if they had main care, if they have it.
If they have main care, Acadia is billing main care.
And if they don't?
Then right now, they will see them for a certain amount of time, but it's not a long, they're not gonna see them for 6 months or a year or whatever the case may be.
And that's where this money is that our funding is because the person didn't have main care?
No, that's to have the service here.
Right, that's what I mean.
Oh, so that price is a flat fee and they'll see, so that's the contract cost.
That's it, under the contract that we have, right, to have that person.
So a student may have so many visits and then that's it, based on that contract?
The students that have main care are billed through Acadia, but that person also will see students without main care.
And do they pay for people, do they bill non-main care insurances as well? So people
They do not.
Acadia Hospital does not bill private insurances.
The students that the contract that we have with this
with Acadia allows them to build main care.
And that's it?
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead.
What I was just gonna add is it also depends on the level of licensee of your clinician. So depending on that person's license, they may not be eligible to bill commercial payers.
Thank you.
Main care.
Thank you. And then I think I just want to clarify, so the state of Maine allows minors, I believe at the age of 14, Chris, maybe you can answer this better, it may be 12 now, I know for a while it was 14, that kids at the age of 14 and up can receive mental health services on their own accord without parental knowledge. Is it 14 or 12?
If they are found to have capacity.
So is that age 14?
There actually is not.
No age. So at any age, a minor can access mental health services?
If they are found to have capacity.
Okay.
To be able to consider.
Thank you. Does the school have a policy at every level ensuring that minors who are on school property receiving taxpayer-funded schools that need to be free and appropriate? Do they have a policy ensuring parents that they won't provide mental health services to a child without a parent's knowledge and consent? I'm not familiar with them, but there could be.
So I believe what I heard Mr. Walsh and Mr. McLaughlin say was that when a student sees the counselor, correct, that we have to get parental consent. That's our practice. Is that?
That's correct. That's our practice.
Is there a policy, a written policy?
I don't.
I'd have to look at the contract to see if it's actually in their language, but we don't.
So my final statement, I promise Justine I'll be done. Again, this is my parent hat on, my resident hat on, not my counselor hat on. I strongly suggest, having been involved in the healthcare system with minors, I strongly suggest, in order to keep the trust of parents, that the school committee move forward and create a policy that makes it clear to parents that children will not have access to mental health services paid for by the school without parental knowledge. Respectfully asked.
Thank you.
Josh Henderson, Hermon, very briefly, forgive me if I missed it, but are there additional funds in this budget for it? It appears to be, kind of a rising climate of security issues that we're seeing across the country, and I know super happy about the SRO, but is there anything in addition to the SRO plan to kind of make the schools more secure?
Yeah, we're also recommending to add a high school safety monitor as well into that. Any other public comment?
Ford, Hermon. You mentioned $6,000 legal budget for 23. Any idea what was actually spent? You may have said it, I'm sorry if I missed it.
We're still in 23, we're still in fiscal year 23, and we're over $20,000. If you shoot me an email, I can tell you what the exact number is off the top of my head. I don't know, but I'd be happy to answer it for you.
Thank you. Were any of those used for questions outside of Hermon School District? Any legal, did anybody use our lawyers here for anything outside Hermon School District?
Not to my knowledge.
I can answer that
I
for
haven't
me.
seen.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, so no charges in there for that?
No, sir.
Any other public comment? Okay. Item 5. Item 5, personnel resignations.
I have accepted the resignation of varsity girls basketball coach Chris Cameron. As you know, Mr. Cameron has been with us for a number of years now. I think it's 5 or 6, and took the girls to 2 different state championships, and obviously is transitioning and moving on. So wish him the best of luck. But yeah, he'll be missed. He did a really good job with our girls program, and yeah, we just really appreciated his service. Varsity sports, any coaching position takes an immense amount of time, and we appreciate all the work and effort Mr. Cameron put into the ladies program here for the Hawks, and enjoyed quite a bit of success. So, yeah, Chris Cameron.
Okay, thank you. B, transfers.
This is inaccurate. So this should be under employment, not under transfer. 'Cause
She's not a current teacher, she's an ed tech, so it's not a transfer.
She's moving from an ed tech to an interim teacher position.
It's an appointment.
It says that.
Oh, it does say that? Oh, thank you, okay.
Ed tech.
Yep.
Yeah, ed tech to self-contained
Yep, thank you.
teacher.
So, yeah, thank you. I just saw self-contained, I didn't see the ed tech. So, we are transferring Carly Bowers on emergency certification from self-contained ed tech to self-contained teacher for the remainder of the year. We have been doubling up in that program with 2 teachers, and so we are doing basically a 2-month transfer and moving her into that position for the remainder of the year, and then we'll obviously reevaluate when the school year is over.
Okay, I move to approve the transfer of Carly Bowers from the elementary school self-contained ed tech to the elementary school self-contained teacher.
Seconded?
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions?
Guess it's an elementary school position.
Thank you. C, employment.
Yes, so you have a network engineer position in front of you. Let's see here. I am recommending Mr. Joshua Burgess to the position of network engineer. Mr. Burgess has, in his previous life or in a past work experience, he used to be our assistant director here at Hermon Schools, our assistant IT director. Unfortunately, or I shouldn't say unfortunately, but Mr. Burgess pursued employment through another organization and left us a couple of years ago. And as you know from last year's budget and then from a few of my superintendent reports, we have a very complex network here at Hermon Schools, and we've been short-staffed in the IT department. We are currently at we're over 1,600 devices, one-to-one with students, over 200 professional staff with one-on-one or using technology, and really felt like for the size of our campus network, et cetera, that we needed to bring along this position. Mr. Burgess applied. We feel like he is immensely qualified for the position, and have just been, we're really pleased through the interview process with his knowledge of the network, his vision for the next 5 years for Hermon Schools, and again, he worked for us from July 15 to September of 20 as our assistant IT director, and just really has a knowledge regarding all the intricacies of our system, and has actually been one of the point people for the network upgrades that we are having done here at Hermon Schools over the last 8 months. So I'm pleased to present Mr. Burgess for hire. Like Mrs. Keiser said, this is not in the budget. This is through ARP funding. And so we would be looking to bring him on in May, and then be funding that position through ARP funding for next school year.
Jesse, are we able to make a motion to table this item?
You make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to table this item, please.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
So will there be discussion for the questions that I plan to ask on this, or because you're tabling it, we won't discuss it at all?
Any discussion?
Well, I'm clarifying, like, if that means that I ask all these questions or no, because.
Yes, you
Ask a question too.
have an opportunity to, yeah.
Okay. So, I'm unsure why she's choosing to table it, but I think it's a good idea, because my question is this: we have never seen a draft of this job description. You had sent in one of your superintendent reports that you were drafting a network engineer position to bring to the board for approval, and that process has not happened.
I apologize if I didn't bring it to the board for approval. If we do have a drafted position, we put it on Serving Schools in February. It was posted internally across the district, and it ran for 3 or 4 weeks. I have it written down here.
So you posted the job without approval from the board of the position, which will affect our budget going forward? Is that what I'm hearing? Clarify.
I posted the position on Serving Schools and the job description on Serving Schools in February.
Well, we don't currently have that position, so how could you post a job that we don't currently have that position?
Just to clarify, I tabled it because I feel that we need to get through to the budget, and we're already quite a bit over time, and I just think that it will be, it's already a position that we don't have, so I just don't feel waiting a month is going to hurt us drastically, or the students. That's my reason.
No, I think that that's something that I'd be more than happy, obviously, to evaluate and bring back to the school committee for a job description approval if that we don't have one on file. I have no issue doing that, obviously. It's your position.
Answer the question.
So you did say he's currently working here. You mentioned how he has been helping with the network and putting in things.
No, he does not work for us. We have a contracted service that he's been one of the point people. He's on their payroll.
Do you have a contract for that contracted service?
We have a agreement based upon a bid that you have, that the entire school committee has, that RFP that was done last spring. It's through Bangor IT. We've talked about this. I've reported it. Phase 1 completion, Phase 2 completion, switches, APs, etc.
You said earlier that your current network engineer is funded through ARP funds.
No, I didn't say that. I said the plan was to fund it through ARP funds. I don't have a current network engineer.
Okay.
Any other questions, discussion? Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna say, if we table it, I think it's an opportunity for us to talk about it in tech committee, about the role, not about an individual that's gonna fill the role, but I just think talking about the role could be beneficial.
all those in favor of tabling? It's unanimous. We're gonna need a vote to extend, I'd say probably another 30 minutes.
Yep, I'll make a motion to extend the meeting to 10 o'clock.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, that takes us to D, co-extracurricular positions.
We have Dwayne Graves as a volunteer softball assistant. Mr. Graves helped out last year and has been a mainstay in that program. I know Stephanie is excited to have him. And we have volunteer JV baseball assistant Kevin Boudreau, and this is his first year to the position.
Okay, thank you. Takes us to item 6, old business, excuse the absence of school committee members, we have none.
The student reps.
The student reps, yeah. No. Item 7, new business. And I know we already had public comment, but I'll open for, I'll open public comment for the budget one more time. Okay, I'll close public comment.
I'll move to approve the first reading of the 2023-2024 budget.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
Can you clarify, first reading with policies, I've come to find that it didn't work the way that I believe it's supposed to work per policy. So usually first reading is you are agreeing to what's there and there's no more discussion about it, and then can you help me understand as a newbie over here how a first reading works, and then drafts or things that could be edited after?
Yeah, so this motion will be based on what was presented here. And then you have an opportunity after this to make recommendations or changes or questions.
So correct me if I'm wrong, there's a motion, there's a second, now's the opportunity, like if you had a suggestion to make it, right?
Yep.
Well, even after.
And after.
Yeah.
And after this meeting.
But the next meeting, it'll be put forward, and then the second reading, and then it can just go through no matter what to the town. Is that, so if we pass it tonight with no amendments, then the next reading, it would go forward and pass, and then it would go to the town?
Well, it would be another motion for a second reading, so it would either pass or be rejected depending on the vote of the committee.
So now is an opportunity, if you have concerns, to talk about it, please, and then the second time is another opportunity.
But not really.
No,
Because the second time it's supposed to be ready to go, is that right?
Yeah, but we can still make changes.
Yep.
I just would add that Jesse, or maybe it was Micah, talked about possibly another, or most likely, would probably be a better description, another meeting prior to our May meeting. And also there was one thing that Jesse suggested tonight that hasn't been acted on, that I think we could have discussion in the next meeting about, like, looking at the, oh, it's not up there anymore, the undesignated, or what was it about?
The reserve.
The reserve, yeah, we're talking about that. It's getting late, none of us can think anymore.
The budget
Yeah.
The budget can change at the next reading if you, because I could get ED 279 different numbers. That happened from Finance Committee to now. So you're just approving this reading, but there could be a suggestion to cut, add, I mean, that could happen on May 1st or prior to that, and the number could change.
I just feel I was given a lot more information from the slides that I didn't have ahead of time, so I could be well prepared to make any sort of well-informed questions or decisions. I didn't have that information ahead of time, so I personally need more time.
And that can, like I said, that number can change.
I feel the same too.
Yeah.
So should we table this?
No, we want to put the first reading, but we can make the request to have, like, the PowerPoint emailed to us so it's bigger. We can see I can't see some of the little. And then we'll have another discussion at the next meeting as well.
Did much change since the last finance meeting that we had?
There were
A shift. So the state made a mathematical error, and there was a massive shift, I would say, in our favor. And so I think for us it was 150 or 90? 190,000 moved from local additional to state appropriation. So we took off 190 from our local. So instead of asking for 310, right, 318,000 plus 190. So instead of asking for 500 and X amount, we're now asking for 318. So it was a massive shift. Yep. I don't anticipate that big of a shift again in our favor, certainly, but there could be small changes.
I thought it said 18-something million at the last finance meeting, and this one was nearly 19-something, correct? No? Am I wrong? I could be wrong. So I guess my question is, having had gone through this with policy, things can get driven through without the board having a say, and I'm just very weary of passing this without more discussion. And it's late and we're all tired and we can't think, so it's irresponsible of me to, I guess.
Do you have concerns about it that you want?
I don't, I want to be well informed, and I didn't have the chance to have that before this meeting.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions?
Because we have our own budget. We have our own budget.
That motion carries. Item 8, reports. A, administrative.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is that we had a very good meeting with the school resource officer's boss, that would be Sheriff Morgan. We met on Friday, and one of the things that we spent a significant amount of time talking about was the role and responsibility of a school resource officer. And thankfully, they're a few months ahead of us with another school district in Penobscot County, K-8 school out in Horrington. And there's an officer there. I think they're a couple of months ahead of us. And they were able to bring in their list of concerns and or challenges or things they've had to work through. And so we had a really, really positive meeting with the sheriff and with Chief Knapp and our soon-to-be resource officer, Mr. Boyd. And I'm really encouraged. So right now, based upon the logistics of, getting his office set up, getting him access to all the buildings, going through roles and responsibilities, we are anticipating a start date of April 15th. And so we think he's going to be in district starting that week. So we are, again, just 9 months in the waiting and just really happy to have him on board. So Mr. Boyd's going to be starting this month.
Anything else for administrative reports? Okay.
Actually, I had a question on the
Sure.
rooms. A statement was made to a staff member that you guys were switching to rooms because the amount of money that you were spending on FOA requests, and the understanding to the staff is that if they use rooms, that is not FOA worthy. Can you clarify why that statement was inaccurately said to your staff?
I'm sorry, can you just say that one more time?
Sure.
I'm just looking at my report. So you're not referencing my report.
Isn't that where it is?
I just talked about the new program of rooms.
Yes. So my question was, the statement was said to your staff that the amount of money that the district has spent on FOA requests is so high that if we go to rooms, that it would alleviate having to get information.
So I'm not aware of any such statement being made to the staff regarding that.
Okay. I just want to be sure that they understand that even though they use other platforms, it's still FOA worthy.
So when you communicate with a parent,
Yes.
that's not FOA worthy. So anything that's FERPA related is not a FOA-able item. So if a teacher's talking to a parent, that's not FOA-able regarding their student. This is a communication platform for parents to talk to teachers and vice versa. So it's a two-way communication.
So there's no
within
staff-to-staff communication through the rooms.
That's correct.
They use email.
The staff to staff, yeah, they would talk through email or obviously in person, or I'm sure they text each other and things like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Facilities and Track Committee.
It's underway. It's looking good, I guess.
I think the big update that we got is it's on track. It's on at least on schedule, in that for the football and soccer teams, the multi-purpose field is on track to be playable for the fall sports.
We're excited about the turf. They've looking at purchasing that, and yeah, it was a good meeting and things are underway. And
Good. Finance Committee, I think we beat that one. Policy Committee?
I don't have anything to report other than we will be looking at a date coming up.
Yes. Looking at a late April meeting, maybe early May, we have a few policies that we have to look at. We'd like to look at a Narcan policy, and we'd also like to look at a GT, updated policy on GT testing. So we're looking at late April or early May.
Okay. Tech Committee?
Yeah, Yeah, I know it was mentioned in the minutes from last meeting. I know that we didn't have a meeting because it was budget season and negotiations. But now that we're getting well underway with the budget, I know we'll have one in April before the next board meeting, right, Micah?
Yep. Okay, Spruce?
Yeah, I thought it was worthy of me sharing. I think I quickly shared at the last meeting. So, and not everybody might know what Spruce is. So Spruce is the Southern Penobscot Regional Program for Children with Exceptionalities. And there are actually two programs. One is for the multi-handicap and another one is for behavioral day treatment. And just since we're talking about budget, I thought I would let everybody know what the tuition rate is. So if we needed to send a student to either one of those programs, the multi-handicapped program is, the tuition rate is $54,220.43. And the behavioral one is a little bit lower, it's $43,682. So this is up to date because we just had a meeting last month and passed those budgets. And those are dependent on like the number of students that they have and there affects the rate for schools. So currently at the multi-handicap program, there's only 6 students and they're on average about 51 in the behavioral program. However, I know that they had some students on the waiting list because they were short-staffed as everybody else is and trying to gain employment of people to be able to support those students. But I just thought that was noteworthy to let everybody know how much that costs if we needed to send a student there.
Okay, thank you. Finance report, curriculum, transportation are as written. I'll go around the room on possible future agenda items. Shannon?
Thank you.
Deb?
Thank you.
Haley?
I agree with the Narcan policy. I've been reading that something we talked about in July, so also add to that a subcommittee policy to be added to.
For Narcan?
No, a subcommittee policy, like to actually have a subcommittee policy.
Oh, okay. Steph? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris.
He was shaking
It's
his
getting
head.
late.
Mental health of our students is something that I've wanted us to be able to focus more on since the pandemic, and we've heard a lot from public comment, so I think it's worthy to, whether it's have a guidance talk about it, really figure out the policies around when we involve Acadia. You know, that is definitely something we heard a lot of tonight, so I want to make sure that we look at getting that as an agenda item, as well as personally as a parent, the security of our students. And I know it is of all the administration, but it's definitely something that we should really look at. I know our teachers have such a burden, as somebody mentioned, to be the first line of defense. So safety and mental health of our students, I'd like to see us really start to focus more on.
Can I ask one more thing as far as future policy? I agree with Stephanie that there are other options that I think we should discuss, and I wish we could have discussed at the finance meeting had I been allowed to speak about safety. And I think there are a lot of things that the teachers could have, and there's a lot of technology, and I've been doing some research, and I would love the chance to be able to have that discussion about what options we could use in addition to the SRO going forward, for staff to be able to notify, cameras, smoke bombs. We've seen all sorts of stuff online, and I really think that would be a great agenda item to discuss options that we might be able to instill in our school.
Yeah, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you have ideas, which you have a lot of good ones, and I agree with them as well, these are the opportunities to be able to bring up those items. So if there's, correct me if I'm wrong, I know we're running late, but this is absolutely the opportunity to express those.
Yeah, absolutely, especially we're in the middle of budget, so if these things are gonna change our budget, then this is the right time to bring those items forward.
Like, for example, Haley, like the agency that I work for, we have Crisis Go, which is a system that if there is an emergency within our campus, then everybody knows about it because you have an app on your phone, it goes off, alarm. I know that Bangor just put one into place too, where the teachers are wearing lanyards and then pushing the button and then, but they were the first ones in Maine to get that system. There was enough, the closest was in New Hampshire, but those are pricey ticket items, but definitely things to consider and look at options. And I would also like to add, you mentioned that policy for subcommittee, but I hear what Danielle and other parents have said about, having a policy around parents knowing what's happening with the mental health, and I'm on board with researching that and figuring out how to add a policy. I think that's important. And also, I would like to have more opportunities for us to bring the students back and the teams and to recognize them. We used to do that a lot more often. And I do think that it was mentioned today by someone doing public comment about, it's sad that the students are here and they're witnessing this. So I think bringing the students back to shift and, reframe our mindset and to remember why we're all here.
I don't have anything for agenda items, but Mr. Grant, could we add the PowerPoint presentation if we post it out there for the public?
Yes.
Okay.
I will put it on the website tomorrow.
Thank you. All right, takes us to item 9, approval of warrants. And I'd like to take those all together if we could.
Motion to approve the 9 warrants listed as presented.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions?
We don't sign your warrants.
Thank you.
I move to adjourn the meeting at 9:47.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor?